Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is an audio test. Can I please get confirmation that this audio is being heard?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Hello, hello. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Long time no see.
Good afternoon. Let me just check in and see how many of my colleagues have been able to make it over from the closed session. I see Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. I see Councilmember Freelon. Is there anyone else here from the council at this moment?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. This is an audio test. Can I please get confirmation this audio is being heard?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. All right, we're going to wait one more minute here to see if we need, we were just in a long closed session and we're waiting for another colleague to come. So we have a quorum so we can begin this meeting. Okay, we don't have a quorum yet, and I think here's what we'll do. I know that my colleagues are probably out quickly trying to get a quick bite or something between the meeting and that meeting and this meeting. It's now 1:01. We will reconvene here at 1:05, and we will. I'll convene the meeting at that time. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's now 1:05, and I see that we have a quorum. And so I will now call this meeting of the Durham City Council, this work session, to order at 1:05 on October the 7th, 2021. Certainly want to welcome all my dear colleagues here, our wonderful staff, and all the people who are participating and listening in some form or another. Glad to have you with us today. Our apologies for starting late. We were in a closed session, which ended just a couple of minutes before this meeting. And so some of my colleagues may not quite be here yet.
Recording in progress.
We're glad to be with you. All righty. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freelon.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman. Councilmember Middleton.
I'm here.
Councilmember Reese. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I believe Councilmember Reese has an excused absence today.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. And now we'll move to announcements by members of the council. Any announcements, colleagues? Councilmember Middleton.
Mayor, I just wanted to first off, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, colleagues, to everyone watching, to all of our residents and citizens who may be watching. I just want to take a moment to celebrate and shout out StepUp Durham, who has done a magnificent job in assuming leadership of the rollout of our Excel initiative, Durham's Guaranteed Income Pilot, which is on its way to, I guess, rolling out checks hopefully in December. We are fortunate and blessed to be one of about 30 American cities who will be making a case for guaranteed income at the national level. So shout out to Sarita Hill and all of our friends at StepUp Durham. And they've launched their B campaign, which has been going well. The celebrity appearance, of course, was by the mayor. His video. I hope everyone has had a chance to go to StepUp Durham's Facebook page and website and make a donation to the B campaign in support of our guaranteed income project Excel. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for you and your family's generosity and largesse in helping us get to where we need to be to fully fund our guaranteed income pilot, Project Excel, and roll it out. I hope all of you that are watching, I think they exceeded their goal, so they raised the ceiling a little bit. And I had the website, perhaps you can give it, Mr. Mayor, the link in front of me, but I don't know where that piece of paper is now. But if you go to StepUp Durham's Facebook page, you'll be able to make a donation. There's nothing too small to help us. And congratulations, Durham, on our participation in this guaranteed income pilot. Thanks, Pierre. I think Pierce put it there. Thank you, brother. Shout out to you, brother Pierce, for putting that in the chat. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Middleton. I'm glad you think I was the celebrity. I thought it was Nina Freelon, but hey, it's okay. I'll try to put myself up in that category. I do want to say, I think we ought to be careful about saying exactly when the checks will start rolling out. We don't really quite know exactly when, but it is happening, and don't want to get everybody's expectations up. It'll be in December, but very hopeful that it will be. It'll be soon. Thank you so much. Other announcements, colleagues. All right, we will now move on to priority items, and we'll begin with the city manager. Madam Manager, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I do have a few priority items for you this afternoon. Agenda item number 5, which is a memorandum of understanding with StepUp Durham and Reinvent Stockton Foundation. In an effort to fully execute this memorandum of understanding between the city, StepUp Durham, and Reinvent Stockton Foundation before November 1st, 2021. City Council is being asked today to suspend the rules and vote on the MOU and associated grant budget ordinance during this October 7th work session. I also have some edits to some other items. Agenda item number 13, contract with Volunteers of America of the Carolinas for Homelessness Prevention Services. Attachment number 1 has been updated. Agenda item number 18, the City of Durham Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan. There will be a 15-minute presentation made on this item. And finally, agenda item number 26, which is the expansion of the long-time homeowner grant program to include the Walltown neighborhood, is a supplemental item that has been added. That is all I have this afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you so much, Madam Manager. Colleagues, you've heard the manager's priority items. Can I have a motion for their approval?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Caballero, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman, and Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The motion passes 5-0. And now we will turn to our city attorney. Madam Attorney, welcome. Any priority items today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. It's good to see you. The City Attorney's Office has no priority items today.
Thank you so much, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, any priority items today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. The City Clerk's Office also has no priority items.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And good to see you today. All right, colleagues, we'll now move to the administrative consent items. Under the City Clerk's Office, item 1, approval of City Council minutes. Item 2, Racial Equity Commission appointments. Under the departmental items, Budget and Management Services Department, item 3, request to carry over funds from fiscal year 2021 to amend the fiscal year 21-22 budget and other grant and capital project ordinance and internal service fund spending plan amendments. Under the City Council's Office, item 4, resolution endorsing the Protect the Right to Organize Act. Under item 5, Memorandum of Understanding with StepUp Durham and Reinvent Stockton Foundation. We're going to come back to this item in a moment. This is the item that the manager wanted us to suspend the rules and vote on, but I'm going to go through the rest of the items first. Item 6, funds provision agreement with StepUp Durham and Steady Platform, Inc. Under City County Planning Department, item 7, outdoor seating ordinance. I'm going to pull item 7. Under item 8, Twin Lakes annexation ordinance correction. Under item 9, Community Development Department, contract with families moving forward for emergency shelter services. I'm also going to pull this item. Item 10, contract with Open Table Ministry, Inc. for emergency shelter and homelessness prevention services. Item 11, contract with Project Access of Durham County for emergency shelter and rapid rehousing services. Item 12, contract with Urban Ministries of Durham for emergency shelter services. And item 13, contract with Volunteers of America of the Carolinas for homelessness prevention services. And just to put our staff on notice about the item, what I pulled in item 9, what I really want to hear about when we get to that item is the way in which all these last 5 items kind of fit together. And so we'll look forward to that. Just want to let Mr. Reginald Johnson and his staff know that. Under item 14, Department of Transportation interlocal agreement reauthorizing the Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Under Department of Water Management, item 15, Sewer Outfall Inspection Program South Project. Under Fleet Management Department, item 16, State Contract Purchase Caterpillar 963 track loader. Under General Services Department, item 17, acquisition of 619 Buren Road for the future expansion of Lake Mickey. Let me just say that for those of you all who know my favorite council items, these are always among my top 10. Planning that began a half a century ago by our water department, and here we are doing it again. So it's great to see this. Item 18, City of Durham Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan, and this is a presentation. Item 19, proposed agreement with Durham County, Quaker Creek Farm Solar LLC and Duke Energy Carolinas LLC for the application of the Duke Energy Green Source Advantage Program. I'm going to pull that item. Item 20, sale of property located at 114th North Plum Street, PID number 11656 to Habitat Humanity of Durham. Under Public Works Department, item 21, contract ST 315 unpaved roads improvements 2021. Another great item that I'm really glad to see, including that Briggs Avenue will be the top of the list. That's great. Item 22, utility extension agreement with Foxfield and Land Partners LLC to serve Olmsted Grove. Under presentations, under Department of Transportation, item 23, Durham County Transit Plan Outreach Phase 2 summary. And under public hearings, Budget and Management Service Department, item 24, City Council salary adjustments. Under the Finance Department, item 25, resolution approving the issuance by the Public Finance Authority of its retirement facilities revenue bonds, United Methodist Retirement Home, Series 2021. Under supplemental items, Community Development Department, item 26, expansion of the long-time homeowner grant program to include the Walltown neighborhood. Okay, Madam Manager, the items that I have listed here as pulled are 7, 9, and 19, and the presentations are item 18 and 23, and then we're going to go back in a moment to item 5. Is that what you have as well?
That is what I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you so much. Before I go back to item 5, I'm just wanting to, all right, I see, just looking at our attendees and making sure, yeah, okay. All right, colleagues, can I have a motion that we suspend the rules and vote on item 5?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Freeland.
Second.
Is there a second? Seconded, was that Mayor Pro Tem?
Yep.
Thank you. Moved by Councilmember Freeland, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem that we suspend the rules and vote on item 5. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schewel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it and the motion passes unanimously. Colleagues, we're now going to be voting to adopt the Mayors for Guaranteed Income Grant Budget Ordinance and to authorize the City Manager to execute a Memorandum of Understanding with StepUp Durham and Reinvent Stockton Foundation. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Mr. Mayor, it's my honor to make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Freeland. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schewel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
and Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am, before we get started, I had previously heard from Larissa Seibel that she had wanted to speak. And Ms. Seibel, I noticed you did not sign up. Can you raise your hand if you would like to have 3 minutes to address the topic that you wrote me about? Great. Madam Clerk, can you please make Ms. Seibel available to be heard? Ms. Seibel, we're glad to have you. Welcome, and you have 3 minutes. Ms. Seibel, can you be heard?
Oh,
Yeah, we can hear you now.
okay. My name is Larissa Seibel. I'm here with another person who I hope can also speak briefly. We're here because Durham's facing an eviction crisis and both tenants and landlords need help with rent, and Durham residents are being evicted now because the county emergency rental assistance program is no longer taking applications, and the courts had given tenants more time to get the applications completed if their landlords agreed, but now those funds are gone. And some landlords would refuse to take them because of the strings attached to them. But the city's funds for the city's emergency rental assistance program don't have those same strings. The funds go to the tenant to pay the landlord and negotiate with them or clear the debt and the eviction and prevent that lifelong eviction on their record and be free to be able to find another home. So I just hope that you will quickly, urgently, please open up those applications as soon as possible. And here's the other person who's going to speak to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandra Nelson. On August the 19th of 2021, I went to MacDougall Terrace to pick up one of my grandchildren to take them to a job interview. And as he got in my car, I put my car in reverse and someone shot in my car. And they shot me in my chest. It came out up under my armpit and I still have a bullet in my arm. I talked to someone from social service on Thursday and they called me back on Monday and they denied me for getting help with rent assistance. Like I said, I've been out ever since August the 19th. I don't go back to work until November the 24th. So the lady told me from social service that once I go back to work, that they can help me. And I explained to her, if I go back to work, they probably won't help me because they're gonna try to say I make too much money. So so she said, okay, well, just try back again when you go back to work. So I said, yes, ma'am. So I'm just asking y'all, if there's a way that y'all can open up y'all application to help us that need assistance. We truly need help. And we thank y'all so much for what y'all can do for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so, it's just heartbreaking to hear what you have described in your own personal life. And our hearts go out to you. And I really want to thank you for bringing that to us. When we get to the item about our homeless, funding our homelessness services, Mr. Johnson, to Reginald Johnson, I'm addressing this. I'll also be asking, because I know a lot of our residents want to know what the plans are for the rollout of our the new city ERAP funds. I know that we are now looking, but the county has decided not to take our funds anymore. They're overwhelmed by a new funding that they've received, and so we are now looking hard to try to find someone who can distribute our funds for us and do it in an efficient and an effective way and do it quickly. But I'll ask Mr. Johnson I'm just letting you know that I'll be asking about that when we get to that item. All right. Thank you all so much for your comments. They're very powerful. All right, now we'll move in our agenda to the pulled items, beginning with outdoor 7, outdoor seating ordinance. We have a staff member who's here for that item. Mr. Dobrinsky, good to see you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Pro Tem, Council.
Thank you for this item. We've gotten a lot of email over the last 6 months from people who want us to have permanent outdoor dining, and it's great to see that you all have done such a good job putting this together. We have received an email recently from a downtown restaurateur and Elizabeth Turnbull, and I know that was forwarded to you all, Mr. Dobrinsky. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind just commenting on a few of the points, the important points that she has made.
Great, let me pull that email up.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Yeah, so the email that was sent in had 4 major points that were called out. The first one was in reference to the permit being for 12 months only. In the existing outdoor seating ordinance that has been adopted and in place for roughly 8 years, there's a requirement for renewal after 12 months. And so the language in the ordinance that states that the permit's valid for 12 months, subsequently you would have to apply for a new permit, a renewal. We've been doing that the entire time, the entire 8 years, where we would go back out to individual restaurants or bars and re-permitted the outdoor seating. So this would still be the case with this expanded ordinance. The purpose of that is certainly so that we can ensure that we get the written agreement from the adjacent property owners if they're impacted, so that we can further evaluate sort of the conditions and the success of the outdoor seating. If we had any issues with the establishment, it's a great opportunity for us to evaluate that at that time. So that is still in the ordinance. The other two, I'll skip to number 3, which Elizabeth spoke to the cost for the outdoor spaces. So there is an administrative fee that's been in the adopted fee schedule for the planning department for those 8 years. They'd be required to pay that fee, which is $260. And then if they are to occupy a parking space, they would be required to pay the meter fee. And this is per the adopted fee schedule as well. That's referenced in the proposed ordinances. The third piece that I'll speak to, she did reference what was a typo in the text. We will certainly address that. It was we intended to strike through the authorization of up to 40% in terms of the maximum outdoor space. And so for me to clarify, what this text proposal would allow would be for the restaurants or bars to only occupy as much square footage as 50% of what they have on the interior of their building. And so that would be the ultimate limitation. Currently, that maximum is 25% or 40% with special exception. There's no criteria for that exception, so that was sometimes unclear. It was one of our experiences the last 8 years, was when and where would it go from 25 to 40. So this proposal increases that to 50%, assuming they can meet all other limitations. The other component of the email that you referenced, Mayor, speaks to the final determination from other departments. Specifically, I think the concerns were relating to the requirement that transportation may have particular standards for on-street parking to be occupied. And I'd like to defer to the transportation department to speak a little bit about the guidelines that they're working on today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dobrynski. Mr. Egan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Sean Egan, Director of Transportation. So we've looked at our peer cities to really try to understand what concerns we should be addressing with the guidance that we're providing to restaurants. So we looked at Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Santa Barbara, and Seattle. And we pulled common elements from each city's guidelines that were really focused on ensuring safety, both the safety of the platform structure that would be in the parking space, as well as ensuring safety from the vehicular traffic that would be passing by those spaces, and then making sure that there was adequate space for emergency response for, say, the fire department to be able to access the area. We're also very interested and concerned about accessibility for people with disabilities, and we want to make sure that every step is taken to ensure that these facilities are accessible to all. With that said, the idea in Ms. Turnbull's email of having a template that can be easily adopted by various restaurants, we think is a great idea. We are prepared to work with the stakeholders, work through how to develop that template. And we just want to make sure that whatever template is developed, that it addresses those concerns around safety and accessibility, and that we make sure that the application addresses any specific site concerns at a particular location. So our staff is available to assist. None of the guidance that we've developed so far has just been really preliminary and a summary of the best practices of other cities that have implemented these ordinances.
Mr. Egan, thank you so much. And I'm glad that you all are looking at the template idea. I also thought it was an interesting idea to help our restaurants. And so thank you for that. And thank you to Ms. Turnbull for that idea. And thank you, Mr. Dobrinsky. Appreciate you very much. Before we quit this item, my colleagues may have questions or comments, but I would like to have Nicole Thompson from Downtown Durham, Inc. Ms. Thompson, are you with us? I believe you're a panelist today.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your cooperation and close work with both the merchants and the everybody downtown. A lot of people, not just the restaurants, had to come together around this, as well as with our city staff. But I wondered if you would offer us some comments and give us your perspective on this.
Since the beginning of the temporary outdoor dining and the parking in public spaces, we know that a number of our downtown restaurants have been able to survive through the latter part of last year, and when the case numbers went up, and they are continuing to rely on this outdoor space. The Delta variant, where I think we all thought we might be through this by now, the Delta variant has again caused people some concern. So this expanded outdoor seating to allow restaurants to continue to serve people has again been very helpful to keep a number of our small, and let me stress, locally owned businesses afloat. I think there is a lot of support. Certainly there are some challenges that we'll need to work on as we make this permanent, some that you have heard, and we look forward to working with and bringing the business community together with the city staff to ensure that we try to address those. We recognize that not everyone is going to get their 100% their way, but I think there is a lot of room for compromise. But I think this is a great policy. The template idea is something that we wholeheartedly support and are already reaching out to potential partners on how to make that happen, how to work with the city staff to make that happen. But we are looking for all ways to ensure that this program can continue, that there is some transition from the temporary to the permanent, and then some assistance and cost savings on the part of the businesses as they move to this permanent structure. I also foresee that while there are some businesses that aren't participating, I believe that once this becomes permanent, and we saw this with the sidewalk dining, that others will come on board as time goes on. It was a lot for them to take on, even though DDI did provide seating for those who needed it. We bought tables and chairs and then have loaned them out to the businesses. That there are still a lot of other challenges that need to be taken into account. But I think by making this permanent, we will see some other restaurants who haven't participated to date take this on in the future, especially as they get on more solid ground and are seeing the economy open back up, seeing our office workers return, filling their spaces throughout the day, the morning and the day, and then on into the evening. So again, we're supportive. We appreciate the flexibility and the ability to work with both the staff from planning and the transportation departments as we go through not only this ordinance, but what the design guidelines look like. Also very appreciative of the feedback and the input that we're receiving from our local businesses in downtown.
Ms. Thompson, thank you for those comments and for your leadership throughout the pandemic. You've really had to be nimble, and you have been, and much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. We have a speaker, a member of the public who would like to speak on this item, and that is Mr. Scott Ritchie. And I believe Mr. Ritchie is available to be heard. Mr. Ritchie, welcome. We're glad to have you, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Hi, I'm a local business owner in the greater downtown area in the Central Park, Old North Durham area off Gear Street. I have Accordion Club, which is a restaurant bar. I also live just another block from that neighborhood off Bay Street that's separating Trinity and Gear. My concern is the loss of parking. From a local business and downtown resident, it doesn't seem that as the growth has happened for downtown, that the parking has been addressed in a proportional manner, especially in the neighborhoods just outside of downtown. Already existing is a severe deficit of parking in the Central Park, Old North Durham neighborhood. And when large events are already happening in the downtown area inside the loop, we suffer from loss of business due to loss of parking from how far outside that goes. And to lose some of the most affordable parking after business hours will affect businesses that are not benefiting from the outdoor seating policies in the downtown loop, downtown Durham area. I am for the outdoor seating when it is part of the sidewalk and directly next to those businesses, but when they are pushing out to encompass the sidewalk and the parking, it's just a struggle to wrap my head around when the parking is such a great issue. And I hear regularly pre-COVID shutdown and now the post-COVID shutdown during this Delta variant, how much parking is still an issue. And it does affect business on a regular basis. And I just want to make sure that we're doing something to address that as quickly as we're willing to lose those parking spaces in the downtown area. And it feels like there's some level of subsidizing happening from the government to those businesses down there because of the appearance, and it doesn't feel as equitable in the other neighborhoods outside of that area. Those are really my main concerns, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Rickey, thank you for raising those important concerns. I'll ask, first of all, I'm going to ask Mr. Dobrinsky to address the second point that you made about where is this policy, to whom is this policy available? Who can use it? What's the geographical area? Can you offer some comments on that?
Sure, Mayor. So one of the changes to this ordinance is we're opening it up from just downtown to the entire city. Now we recognize that there's only minimal opportunities throughout the city where there would be adequate sidewalk space or on-street parking. But there are certainly some areas, and we would hope to see some activity in other parts of the city. We do understand the concern in terms of the subsidy and sort of the use of that public space. That's why in the proposal, we're requiring that the parking fee be paid so that the restaurants that would be occupying the on-street parking space would be paying into the system the same as a vehicle that was parking there. So that's really how we were trying to get at the expanded use of the public right of way. Certainly, we do see some benefit just from an urban design standpoint, from a community benefit of just activating our streets and seeing the people out in our downtown and hopefully elsewhere in the city. So that's really to the second point. First point about the parking capacity, I'll once again defer to transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dobrinsky. Appreciate it's important information that this is going to be available citywide. So thank you for that. Mr. Egan, can you talk to the second important point raised by Mr. Ritchie?
Certainly, we're very aware of the competing demands for our on-street spaces. One of the issues that we see is making sure that we find that right balance and really that we prioritize active uses of the curbside. So what are the steps that we can take to make sure that we have enough space for transit vehicles, for loading and unloading for commercial spaces. And then what are other steps that we can take to really activate that space and make sure that the curbside is being used as effectively as possible. So we're undertaking a curbside management study right now, and we'll also be reaching out to stakeholders. And as we review the applications, we've asked applicants to reach out to their neighbors as well to understand concerns that they're hearing from their neighbors and work to address those concerns. So with a combination of really that thoughtful approach to curbside management and then making sure that the whatever applications do come in don't have an unfair burden on the neighboring businesses. We're hopeful that we can strike that balance effectively.
Thank you very much, Mr. Egan. All right, colleagues, other questions or comments? I've taken up a lot of airtime on this item. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Dobrinsky or Mr. Egan? All right, I don't see any. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Dobrinsky and Mr. Egan. We appreciate you being here. All right, now we'll move to item 9. This item is the contract with Families Moving Forward. I see that Mr. Donald Hughes wants to speak on items 12 and 13. Those items were not pulled. We won't be speaking on those, but Mr. Hughes, this item is relevant to those, I believe, as well. If you would like to speak now, you certainly may. Madam Clerk, can you make Donald Hughes available to be heard? And Mr. Hughes, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I just wanted to take an opportunity to speak on this issue because as a community member who has worked for the last year or more actually connecting residents of Durham to support services like rental assistance, food delivery, medicine delivery, clothing, utilities assistance. I know how much this city is in need in terms of folks that are looking for support in the midst of this pandemic. And I must say my heart goes out to Ms. Lipscomb, if that's her name. And I just really am saddened to hear that she's a resident that was shot and that is going through a terrible time and is unable to find support. But I'm speaking today because while we can offer our words to her, we need to offer more than words. We need to offer action. And I believe that as this council prepares to have a public hearing about raising salaries to the tune of nearly $1 million over a 10-year span, that we should be looking at ways that we can immediately help residents that are in need to the impact of this global pandemic. So I would encourage you all to, in the same way that you found funding for the Poet Laureate program, for participatory budgeting, and for other pet projects, that we put aside this political. So if the city needs to take funding that we have and to create an emergency rental assistance program that could get money out the door tomorrow, and that money is reimbursed by the American Rescue Plan Act funding, let's do that. We cannot afford to wait. And then finally, just in regards to seeking out someone to manage, I know the last time that you all put out an RFP for an organization to work, I think the only folks you were able to find was the Department of Social Services under the county. And I think one of the reasons why is because that RFP wanted someone for $40,000 to manage thousands and thousands of requests for rental assistance in Durham. And that amount of money couldn't pay one person to manage it in an organization, because we know we had 10 people working at a similar service in Durham. So if we're gonna say that we're about helping folks and making sure that they get the assistance they need immediately. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we have to put our money where our mouths are, and we have to really commit the resources to getting the outcomes that we want. It just doesn't seem, as I've said time and time again, that there's a sensitivity when it comes to overlooking underserved and marginalized populations. It's encouraged to act tomorrow.
Mr. Hughes, thank you very much for being with us today, and we very much appreciate your comments. All right. Mr. Johnson, welcome.
Greetings, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, Reginald Johnson, Director of Department of Community Development.
Mr. Johnson, I think we'll start with the ERAP before we get into this item, just so our residents can hear about that. Can you talk to us about the status of the second tranche of city funds that we have just received and what the department is planning?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving us this opportunity. One, as you know, we have ERAP 1 and the County Department of Social Services has distributed that on the city's behalf. We do have, this comes from the U.S. Treasury Department, we do have a second phase, ERAP 2, which is about $6.6 million. We've actually received a portion of that. The county has communicated to us, the city, that they will not be able to distribute the second tranche ERAP 2 on behalf of the city due to capacity challenges that they're having with the funding and other programs. I have been in contact with my colleague, Ben Rose, and understand and appreciate that, and definitely thank the county for the work that they're doing. What we're doing now, in terms of trying to get the funding out, is looking for vendors. I would just say that I was in a meeting just yesterday, one to this morning, to identify someone or some entity that can distribute the money for us. The city is not able to do it itself, which is why we have to have a partner. But I will share with you that the number of partners that can do it are small, and the number of partners, this is across the state, and the number of partners that are able to do it and have experience doing it are, I would say, occupied with the work that they're doing now with ERAP 1 and ERAP 2. And we've been talking with them. We've actually been approached some and been declined already. But we are working diligently to figure out how we can have a pathway forward. I would just say that, in terms of getting this funding out, just to speak plainly, it's more than just taking an application and writing a check. It's way more involved than that. And that's one of the challenges that the county and other vendors are having. And so we're looking diligently to explore our options. All of the options that we have, which is not many, are fraught with some challenges that we have to work through. But I would say that we are working through it. We recognize the need. We know that we need to get this funding out, but we have to have a mechanism that works to be efficient, and that's what we're working toward.
Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, this is a little bit with ERAP, and then just another quick question that I had. Previously, Legal Aid was a potential partner, and I'm just curious if we have approached them or if they're also having capacity issues.
So I would say that, well, yes, we have approached them. That's one of the options we've had conversations with. That's number one. But we also have to realize that they don't have the complete package, and it has to be paired with some other entities to be able to be successful. That's makes it a little bit more complicated than just contracting with one entity and hey, you started. So the answer is yes. We're in conversations and have met with them.
Thank you. And this isn't so much with ERAP, so I can wait for my other colleagues. It's more just an eviction question. If folks had questions about ERAP directly, or I can ask it now. I can go ahead and ask. Okay, just there was also, and I can't remember there was a conversation around more assistance towards legal aid specifically for extra eviction attorneys. And I just was wondering where we are with that.
Well, council member, I think that's one of the conversations we've had with the manager's office, because the manager's office is the driver with that, and with no more. We serve on the administrative side, so I'm not able to provide any detail right now, though I do know about it and we'll be working toward that.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I just hope that we can get something going quickly, and we're the emails and not just emails, calls and everything. We're in some real urgency here. And I have some follow-up questions for number 9, but I know other folks have questions as well.
Thank you, council member. Let's stick to the ERAP for a minute, and then we'll get back to the other aspects of item 9 here. Colleagues, any other questions or comments from Mr. Johnson about the ERAP program, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if you know what our peer cities are doing that have similar pots of funds, and how are they getting them out?
Yes, we do know what our peer cities have done. We've done some surveys and talked with some entities, and we've talked with the entities that have serviced them.
Okay.
Some, and we're pursuing some of those. Some of those have already communicated that they can't take any more in terms of capacity. And then some communities, such as Charlotte, for example, have some some organizations that are unique to Charlotte that they're able to pull together that we don't have here in terms of capacity of our organizations. And so the answer to your question, yes, we've actually done a survey of our peer cities.
Gotcha, thank you. And so are we able to use the money in order to create the capacity to distribute the money?
There is money for admin costs. That's part of the money. So the answer to that question is yes. But one of the things that we have to realize is not just always money. It's always the technology is big. The number of people are big in terms of doing the intake. The process that you use is also important. And if you remember, with the first amount of money that we received, the county received our administrative portion as well as theirs, and they also used additional money, county money, to help administer the program.
So you would say the administrative costs that are worked into the funding are not sufficient?
Well, we have to be prepared that they're not.
Okay. But we can supplement with city funds so that if we found a provider, we could make sure that they were compensated appropriately for the work.
Mayor Pro Tem, that gets out of my domain and gets into the lane of the manager, city manager.
Gotcha. I'm just wondering if, if we're not finding a provider, can we offer that, if that's because the cost of doing the program would be too high, can we offer them something?
Well, I'm prepared. Well, this is what my responsibility to the city manager is, to make sure in our communities, make sure that we have a plan that is effective and that can work. And that's, I don't want to say irrespective of cost, but it needs to be able to do that. And so that's my charge. I'm not really focused on the amount of money right now. I'm focused on, can we get somebody regardless of money?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. If you could, just keep us up to date on how the search is going. We've got a lot of folks real interested in getting this money out the door.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. And I will be doing that, and we'll need to do that because I really feel that we do need to level set on terms of expectations because this is challenging. One of the reasons that we went to DSS in the first place is because a lot of the infrastructure they already had in place. And so the worst outcome for us is that a more challenging outcome, I could say, a more challenging opportunity is if we have to build the infrastructure ourselves.
Right. Thank you.
Madam Manager, did you want to comment?
just very briefly, Mr. Johnson has mentioned the manager's office a couple of times, so I sit behind the screen and I decided to pop in, but I did want to assure the mayor and council members that what Mr. Johnson is speaking about, I have actually been directly, personally involved in looking for the appropriate solutions myself, along with him and his team. They're working very, very hard on a lot of different initiatives right now. And we know that they're all extremely important and that we are, you know, many of us, municipalities and other organizations have some very extreme challenges around sourcing people to do things that we need them to do. And so we have to be really creative and we have to continue to innovate and, you know, ultimately serve the residents with the funding that we have that is meant for them. And we intend to do just that.
Thank you, Madam Manager. We appreciate that very much. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Freelon.
Yes, just thinking about the conversation, just appreciating the comments and queries of my colleagues. Mr. Johnson, you mentioned this capacity building piece. It's reminding me of a similar struggle we had initially with guaranteed income, where we put out an RFP and we couldn't find anybody. Then we had to, you know, shift some things, and then we were able to get one organization, an excellent one that's now doing a great job. And even just across the department, across this country, there have been capacity issues with the job market in various ways. But I am intrigued at the possibility for us to build this capacity internally, and what other things it might allow city government to do moving forward beyond this particular challenge. And I'm curious, hypothetically speaking, if we were to build this capacity internally in terms of training and hiring and onboarding, is there an idea in your mind of what a timeline to take on such a task would take? And is that something that, you know, would delay things even further? We don't have the capacity. We would need to build it from scratch. So anyway, I'm curious to hear a little more on your thoughts about that potential hypothetical scenario.
Well, thank you, council member, for that question. I would say this: we have money and a need that's immediate, and our goal is to get it out as efficiently and effectively and as quickly as we can. I know that there are a lot of conversations about capacity. The capacity for this program is significant. And one of the challenges that we have with somebody who we knew we had capacity with is on the back end because of the reporting, which we still have challenges with DSS on that end. So when you talk about building it from scratch with persons or entities who don't have experience with this type of funding and this type of regulation, I can't put a time frame out there, but you can imagine that it's significant because it's challenging for those who already have it, which is one of the challenges why persons have declined us already. We know how to do it. So I'm sorry I can't give you an estimated time frame, but we're talking about, and from my perspective, longer than what the need is immediate now, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess my thought there would be, I wonder if there's a kind of walk while we build solution where we scramble to find whoever we can find to get the funds out the door in the short term, while thinking about building some internal capacity to avoid these types of challenges moving forward. Though I know this is a unique scenario, it's just such a frustrating position to be in, to have folks, you know, that we know can do the work, but just don't have the capacity. This sounds like a tough job. I appreciate the effort and brain cells you've been pouring into this.
Well, thank you, council member, and believe me, it takes a few brain cells as well with my team, because it's not just mine. I don't have enough to be able to do it. This is one of the things that's challenging because we do know there's a need. There's a huge need, but we don't have the funnel to get out. And I appreciate what you're saying about this is a pandemic. Normally, we wouldn't be in this type of business, so we wouldn't have the infrastructure, which is why we engage with entities that normally do, this is their line of work. It's not the community development department line of work in terms of we don't have that. And I would say that it's not the city's government, or municipal government, but we're in a pandemic. In some respects, all bets are off. So we have to do this. So that's the reason you don't have the infrastructure already ready to go, add water and stir and we roll on. So that's that. And that's, perfectly understandable. My challenge and our challenge is to meet what's on the ground now. We have to deal with the realities of what we have. And yes, it is a challenge, but we're going to figure out a way.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. All right, colleagues, if there are no other questions or comments on ERAP, we'll go back to the main aspect of this item. Mr. Johnson, we have 5 items here from your department, all related to expenditure of COVID, ESG, COVID funds. And good for you all for, another huge processing. I know that it's hard to get these RFPs together and to get everything processed and to move the money out. And so congratulations. There are, if you say it's the items several times, there are 57 families waiting for emergency shelter. There are 166 single individuals. And these items are to help address that need. Could you just talk us through what these various items, how they interlock? Are they, I've read each of the items, but am not clear about kind of how they work as a system, and would appreciate your enlightenment.
We'll be glad to do that. I would say this is money that we received for COVID relief, emergency solutions grant. What I'm going to do is actually ask Colin Davis, who is Durham's homeless system manager, to come on and to be able to tie these together and talk about how they interrelate to each organization and the scopes of work that they're doing. And I'll come back and tie things together if necessary in the further questions. I'll turn it over to Colin Davis.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City Manager, Colin Davis, Manager of the Homeless System Community Development Department. So you bring a great question to the table, Mayor. How do these funds tie together? And as you see, there's a little over $1.8 million, which is a subset of our total allocation of $2.6 million of Emergency Solutions Grant COVID funds that we call ESG CV funds. The first round of ESG COVID funds were deployed last year for rapid rehousing, emergency shelter, and we use those also for our winter shelter, where we stood up Open Table Ministry, did a winter shelter from January 2021 through March 31st, 2021. So the balance of the funds are before you today for approval. And as you're looking at it, you'll see that there are 4 contracts that have emergency shelter funds built into those. Families Moving Forward, Open Table Ministry, Project Access, and Urban Ministries. Families Moving Forward will be using those funds to sort of help families. That's their focus, covering food, potentially hotel rooms if they have people who test COVID positive and we don't have room elsewhere. Open Table Ministry is planning to use funds to stand up another winter shelter to help us this winter, as we expect COVID guidelines to remain in place and the normal way of doing things where urban ministries and Durham Rescue Mission have been able to take people on in congregate space may not be an option again this year. Project Access will be using these funds specifically to provide supportive services to our neighbors who are medically vulnerable, either at the Carolina Duke Inn, and they're also the ones who use those funds to provide the supportive services to our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, who test positive for COVID and need to shelter in isolation at the duplex that the county is paying for. Urban Ministries will be using these funds to supplement services as they are running 2 locations, Urban Ministries on Liberty Street, as well as the location at Carolina Duke Inn. So Urban Ministries has increased their expenses of having to staff 2 locations and provide additional security there. We are also starting a new homeless prevention program, which will be run by Open Table Ministry and Volunteers of America Chesapeake, of the Carolinas, sorry. The homeless prevention program, it's important for us to remember, it is a homeless prevention program. Homeless prevention program is different than an eviction prevention program. So ERAP prevents evictions. The homeless prevention program is specifically targeted to people who are most likely to end up becoming unsheltered homeless or needing to come into an emergency shelter. So the goal is to deploy supportive services to figure out what's happening, what's going on. There's a small amount of money that could be deployed to help transition people to a more affordable unit. There is a small amount of money that could be used to cover a small amount if needed to keep people housed. But we're talking about $600,000 total in prevention money, which really doesn't go far if you put it all into direct assistance. It's really meant for a very small subset of people who are most likely to enter homelessness, most of which we anticipate will be people who have a history of homelessness. It's not a requirement, but statistically speaking, people who have a history of homelessness and are about to lose housing are more likely to enter homelessness again than those who have never been in the homeless system. So we'll be working through and are currently working through program design with both Open Table Ministry and Volunteers of America to structure those programs to make the biggest impact possible and stretch those dollars as quickly as possible, as far as we can. And then Project Access is also stepping up their rapid rehousing program, which will allow them to move people experiencing homelessness who are medically vulnerable into permanent housing. So that's sort of what all of these do. Now these funds get kind of intertwined with other contracts that are already in place with the city, our normal emergency solutions grant funds, HUD continuum of care funds, state emergency solutions grant funds, state emergency solution COVID grant funds. And we also have overlay these with what the county is putting out, as the county has rented the Carolina Duke Inn, as well as a duplex for people experiencing homelessness. They are seeking FEMA reimbursement for those costs. However, FEMA doesn't cover the supportive services that our neighbors would like to have to help them move to permanency. So we are sort of using all of these emergency solutions grant COVID funds to provide the supportive services and dovetailing it with the FEMA funds so that we as a system can maximize and leverage all of the resources at our disposal to help as many people as possible. I hope that answers
Mr.
your
Davis,
question.
thank you. Yes, it does. That was an excellent summary, and I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Colleagues, questions or comments for Mr. Johnson or Mr. Davis? Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate all of that. That was really helpful. to see how all of these organizations are interplaying and utilizing these dollars. Specifically for families moving forward, I know we're seeing more families facing eviction and wondering what is the coordination with DPS? Is there coordination happening? I'm assuming that in many cases our schools and our school personnel there, social workers and guidance counselors are going to hear about these issues first. And so I just want to ensure that there's deep coordination happening so that we can support these families as best as possible.
Sure, it's a great question. Durham Public Schools, we have very close connections with them, and they are often referring people to our continuum of care to be put on various by names lists and determining whether or not funds and programs are available to their tenants. The good news is the COVID funds have expanded and given us a little bit of leniency on some things, and these prevention funds may be able to help some of those families. But once again, it's a very small pot of money. So I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that this is, a huge godsend and it's going to fix everything. Because when you look at this pot of money of $1.8 million compared to the ERAP money, it's a much smaller scale that we can help. So we really are trying to target it.
I appreciate that. And I just want you to know, and and this is for city staff as well, we know we're in a COVID crisis, we are in a housing crisis, but right now, an eviction and displacement crisis. And whatever we can do, whatever dollars that we need to leverage that are local dollars additionally, I know as a council member, we just need real clear transparency from staff of what the needs are. Consistently seeing terrifying stories about families being displaced, and then what does that do? So just, I hope that you all continue to let us know what needs to happen so that we, as the best of our ability, can make it happen.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, other questions and comments for Mr. Johnson or Mr. Davis? All right. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you a lot.
Your Honor, I think Councilmember Freeman was speaking.
My hand.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Council Member. Go ahead. My apologies.
I just wanted to kind of just ask Mr. Davis to also speak to how essentially the lived experience of folks who have gone through this, because I know we were talking about a long time, folks who've been homeless and continue to kind of fall back into the homelessness. I'd love to hear how in developing the program and supports that we're centering the people who have lived experience in that, because as we try to evaluate that, it's good to have them at the center of the conversation. And so if you could share exactly how that happens, that would also be good to kind of wrap up all of this conversation.
It's a great question, Council Member. The lived experience is something that we take very seriously, and we have 2 seats on our Homeless Services Advisory Committee for people with lived experience. And one of those people is on our Policy and Planning Committee. The Policy and Planning Committee is the group who works to develop the written standards, which are kind of, how do we operate this program within Durham? So the voice of somebody with lived experience will be part of crafting these policies and procedures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. We appreciate very much you all being with us today. These items are important, and thank you all for these contracts, and we are certainly very supportive. I think you've heard from what Councilmember Caballero said, and the manager has also referenced that in terms of the support that you need, certainly in terms of any administrative support for the ERAP funds, I know that the council will be supportive of whatever you all need to make that happen quickly and efficiently. And so don't hesitate to come to us for the resources that you need. I think I should also say, I don't want people to go away with the impression that the county just kind of stopped doing what they were doing with us for no reason. The county has received another significant amount of funds from the state, social services is now going to be involved in getting that money out the door. And so social services is one of our truly, they've been as challenged as any of our, I think, government agencies through COVID, so with the exception of perhaps public health. And so we're grateful to them. And they've done a really solid job of getting our funds out the door, our city funds, as well as their own. And so want to express my gratitude to Ben Rose and Janine Gordon and everybody over there. All right, Mr. Johnson, any final comments?
What I would just like to say, Mayor, is just to echo your thoughts. Of course, I don't, prefer not to speak behind you, but I do want to say that I understand the county's position. Particularly, we have a complex relationship with the Department of Social Services. And to be honest with you, I can see how the ERAP is impacting our relationship on other matters because of the resources that it's taking. And so we're all here for service, and we're all here to make needs because there are significant needs in our community. And I just want to say thank you to the Department of Social Services for the work they have done, and I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Davis. We appreciate you being with us today. Colleagues, we'll now move to item 19, proposed agreement with Durham County Quaker Creek Solar Farm, LLC. And I see Ms. Austin is with us. Ms. Austin, we used to see you in another capacity. Now you're over in general services, bringing your brilliance over there, and it's great to see you in this new capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's great to be with you.
This is an exciting, very exciting. You know of my interest and the council's interest in the Green Source Advantage program. And so this item read sort of differently than some other items that we're used to because it's on a very tight timeline. So my questions are, I'll just ask several of them at once, and then you can let me know. What is the probability that Quaker Farms will be able to get the necessary changes made by the Utilities Commission and apply to the program by the October 31st deadline? Is there a way you could describe to us in layperson's terms the necessary changes? And is the Utilities Commission primed to do this? I'm assuming that they are, that these discussions have occurred. And then finally, if we miss this deadline, which I hope we won't, what is the likelihood we'll be able to access the unused capacity that may be available in 2022? Those are my questions.
Okay, well, we appreciate the questions. I am happy to try to answer them, but I do want to acknowledge that there is an entire team of folks behind me who will back me up and who will fill in any gaps that I leave. As it relates, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sorry, I did it again. Good afternoon, everyone. Summer Alston, General Services. Mr. Mayor, as it relates to the probability, our discussions with our partners at Duke and our renewable supplier suggest that we are very well situated, and every available avenue is being pursued in terms of making sure that we have dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. We think we're queued up. We feel confident we're ready in terms of probability. I don't know how to put a percentage on that for you because there are things that are outside of our control, but I can assure you we've done everything on our end that could conceivably be done. As it relates to describing the change, like I said, we've got a lot of heavy hitters here, but I think the gist of it is that the change has happened on the regulatory side. It hasn't had anything to do with anything that was within our control. And essentially the project and the renewable provider that we are proposing to partner with had done the work. There was a change on the regulatory side, and we had to pivot to meet that regulatory change. There was a commission filing with the Utilities Commission on September 17th, which was done specifically to allow us to meet this new challenge. And we anticipate, while we can't control the commission's agenda, we anticipate that the commission will rule in our favor or favorably for us within about 30 to 60 days. And so we are now set as of today with the renewable provider that as soon as the commission rules, Duke thinks they will need about 10 days, after which we will be able to officially apply to the program. So there's still a little bit of fluidity throughout the month of October and through the month of November. But we're hopeful and we're optimistic that the commission will rule and everything will come into alignment. And as it relates, I think I blended two of your questions there. So let me pause for a minute and make sure I'm on track.
You're on track. Yeah.
Okay, and there is additional capacity out of the original 250 megawatts that we have been working towards securing an allocation out of. There is still a portion out there that would conceivably become available in August of 2022. So while we don't have any intentions of missing this goal, we think we're very well situated to take advantage of the capacity that's left in this bucket. We would be, if we were to somehow miss this, we would be in alignment to roll right to that August 2022 capacity and vie for that.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Alston. That's great. I see that Ms. Wendy Fleener is here from Duke Energy. Ms. Fleener, would you like to say a few words and let us know your thoughts about the position that we're in at this point?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wendy Fleener here with Duke Energy. I'm a manager in our clean energy organization. I specifically manage Green Source Advantage. And so I think Summer did a wonderful kind of summary of where things are. So, you know, you guys have done a lot of effort to make sure you're in a good position to be able to apply for the program. As she mentioned, I can't give any, exact percentage, but, this is anecdotally Wendy speaking here. I do feel strongly that you guys are further along than other organizations kind of ready to apply. When it comes to, to add a little bit of additional context to the comment about the likelihood of the commission approving it, we don't foresee there will be any challenges. What really happened, and it's kind of a change to our interconnection process, which is really how any kind of new renewable resource comes onto the grid. So as she kind of mentioned, it was some changes outside of this program, but we really are just asking for something that's comparable to what was done in the past. And so we had to make some adjustments. And I will also tell you the plan we came up with was in collaboration with CCBA, the Carolinas Clean Energy Business Association. So we had their buy-in before we did the filing, which is also very helpful. To the point too, kind of a worst case scenario, if somehow we have 34.9 megawatts available. We do have that 350 that is all currently still available that's been on hold with UNC institutions in the military. So at this point, there is nobody kind of on the waiting list. So as she alluded to, Summer did, you guys would be in the first position for any additional capacity.
Ms. Fleener, thank you. Thank you for being with us today and for your work with the city. We very much appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, thank you, and we appreciate it.
Colleagues, questions or comments for Ms. Alston? Anyone? Ms. Alston, thank you. This is Councilmember Freeman.
I was just going to say I want to thank Ms. Alston and Duke Energy for moving quickly to kind of catch up with the regulation change. I think we will have a good opportunity, and I appreciate that work. You can hear.
Thank you, Council Member. Ms. Alston, thank you. We know that the item that we're about to hear on our carbon neutrality and renewable energy plan is extremely dependent on our ability to get the Green Source Advantage application approved and moving on that. And even after we do it, we're 3 years out, or 2 or 3 years out from being able to actually get the energy, have the energy provided to us through that. So much appreciate your good work. I also want to mention, I see that Carson Harkrader is on the on the call from our renewable energy supplier, and want to thank Ms. Harkrader as well. Any further comments, Ms. Alston?
We're very appreciative, Mr. Mayor. General Services is excited about this. We're optimistic. We're ready to go.
Great. I think I should also say that I knew Ms. Harkrader when she was in the cradle. And so I like to see that she's grown up to be a renewable energy producer. It's pretty exciting. It's great to have our own local folks be able to do it. Ms. Alston, thank you. Much appreciate you. And it's great to see you in your new role.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Colleagues, we have two presentations now. These are our final two items, items 18 and 23. And I'm going to, Ms. Alston, are you up again for item 18?
I believe so. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. Summer Alston, Division Manager, General Services. The General Services Department and the Sustainability and Energy Management Program are pleased to be back before you today to present the City of Durham Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan. With us today to deliver our presentation and step you through the recommendations and strategies brought forth by the plan is Angela Strickland with GDS Associates. Angela will also be available to answer any additional questions that might arise regarding our pursuit of the Green Source Advantage Program. As City Council is well aware, in 2019, we adopted a resolution affirming 2030, 2040, and 2050 sustainability and renewable energy goals. The city contracted with GSD Associates in 2020 to help us develop a comprehensive strategy to reach those stated goals. The plan we have before you today is the result of the work stewarded by the General Services Department and GSD Associates over the past 18 months in partnership with other city departments, the Environmental Affairs Board, and numerous others. I would like to take a moment, if you please, to especially acknowledge sustainability analyst Paul Cameron, who is integral to the progress we've made to date. The Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan provides a blueprint for the city to aid our strategic planning for sustainability initiatives in city operations over the next 3 decades, including helping to guide us through resource allocation, budgeting, performance management, and program evaluation. Durham has already shown leadership in the sustainability space with departments like Fleet and Water Management proactively adopting sustainability practices within their departmental operations. The Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan is the next step in aligning all of our city operations, and successful plan implementation is key to the city reaching council's adopted sustainability and renewable energy goals. And so, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I would like to turn the presentation over to Angela Strickland with GSD Associates.
Very, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Alston, and welcome, Ms. Strickland. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here. I will attempt to screen share to get the presentation up. If you'll please let me know if you're able to see it. Awesome. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Manager, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Angela Strickland. I'm a managing director with GDS Associates. GDS is partnered with Diane Cherry, principal of Diane Cherry Consultant on this project. On behalf of this team, I am pleased to share with you a brief summary of the City of Durham's Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan. I'd like to acknowledge the city staff for their enthusiastic participation in the development of this plan and their commitment to the successful implementation of the plan, as well as the great work that's already been underway and accomplished by the city. First, I'd like to take just a moment to reorient everyone to the goals. As Summer said, in 2019, the Durham City Council demonstrated its leadership in North Carolina and indeed the nation by approving the resolution to transition city operations to carbon neutrality by 2040 and 100% renewable energy sourcing by 2050. The interim goals include a 50% reduction in GHG emissions and 80% renewable energy sourcing by 2030. The Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan identifies potential strategies to achieve the city's goals. This comprehensive plan includes strategies related to energy efficiency, electrification, renewable energy, innovative carbon reduction practices, and community partnerships. It also identifies financial considerations and an assessment of the regulatory and legislative policy implications, and of course provides some implementation recommendations to get started. It is critical to understand components of Durham's existing footprint in order to develop the carbon reduction and renewable energy strategies. As shown here, the city's greenhouse gas emissions are comprised nearly 50-50 of Scope 1 versus Scope 2 emissions. Scope 1 emissions are direct emissions from sources that are owned or controlled by the city. This includes gasoline and diesel fuel used by vehicles, buses, and equipment. And this is shown in blue on the chart, as well as natural gas use in your facilities shown in yellow. The primary strategy to reduce Scope 1 emissions is electrification, which we'll discuss in more detail a little later. Scope 2 emissions are the indirect emissions from sources that are owned or controlled by the city, which is from electricity purchased from Duke Energy. This electricity consumption is comprised of water facilities, streetlights, and buildings, as shown in red on the chart. The primary strategies to reduce Scope 2 emissions include energy efficiency and renewable energy generation. It is important to note also that Duke Energy has announced its plans to be net zero carbon emissions by 2050, with a goal to cut CO2 emissions by 50% or more by 2030. This reduction in emissions from the electricity grid and purchases is taken into account in the analysis and recommendation for the City of Durham. So with an understanding of the city's environmental footprint, we can identify the optimal strategies to reduce emissions and increase renewable energy. The team identified 4 overarching strategies. First, to maximize energy efficiency in city buildings and operations. Second is to expand renewable energy generation and procurement. Third, to increase electrification in fleet and transit, as well as buildings. And then finally, to establish innovative practices, policies, and partnerships. I also want to note that the city is also making strides in each of these areas, and there's not one single solution that will achieve the city's goals. It will take a combination of all these strategies working together. In addition, there's not one department that will achieve the goals. It will take a collaboration among many city departments and leaders, as well as external stakeholders, governmental and philanthropic organizations as well. Again, it's important to recognize the role that Duke Energy plays in the implementation of the plan. As a customer of Duke Energy, the City of Durham will need to continue to work closely with Duke to build on the momentum resulting from the Memorandum of Understanding that was recently signed. So today, I would like to briefly describe the first 3 strategies and some of the associated costs and benefits. First, let's talk about energy efficiency. It's always the first action to consider for a clean energy plan. Again, the city has already made improvements in building operations and infrastructure systems with projects such as high efficiency lighting and equipment retrofits. Based on our analysis, energy efficiency makes up about 12% of the contribution of GHG reductions. This will include strategies such as continued facility retrofits, energy monitoring systems, and smart technology applications. In addition, the city has already begun to build to new green standards such as LEED, which may include solar and storage, high efficiency equipment, energy monitoring systems, and EV charging. It is important to continue this trend moving forward and to encourage other local developers and builders to also construct high performance buildings. And finally, the city recently completed the outdoor streetlight conversion, which also contributes to carbon emissions reduction, as the new streetlights use significantly less energy than the previous ones. The second strategy involves both on-site and off-site renewable energy and represents about 44% of the contribution to GHG reduction. The on-site options include rooftop solar on city facilities, which is already underway, potential landfill options, and other sites such as parking lots and decks. Other options include a biogas combined heat and power project at the North Durham Water Reclamation Facility and the geothermal system at the new Mist Lake facility. The large-scale offset renewable energy procurement project contributes about 1/3 of the GHG reduction. And as we just discussed in the previous item, the Duke Energy Green Source Advantage program is the recommended program to help achieve these goals. Then the third strategy is electrification and contributes about 44% of the GHG reductions. Again, I'd like to recognize the work the city is already doing in transitioning light-duty fleet vehicles and buses to electric. Durham is well ahead of many communities in the country with an award-winning fleet program and electric buses already on the ground. As the technology improves and prices decline, in addition to federal and state funding opportunities that are expected, transportation electrification is a cost-effective and key element of meeting the city's carbon neutrality goals. For Durham, building electrification, that is converting natural gas to electricity, is a relatively small component, and we suggest that it be considered only as part of a major facility renovation. This supply curve or cost abatement curve shows the relative cost and contribution of the various strategies to achieve the carbon neutrality goal. The horizontal axis shows the various strategies that we just discussed and their relative contribution to the goal. The vertical axis shows the cost or savings per metric ton of CO2 equivalent reduction. So the items to the left and below the line have a net savings, and those above the line have a net cost as projected. Moving from left to right, energy efficiency in gold provides the most savings per metric ton of CO2 equivalent reduction, followed by light duty fleet electrification. At the far right are some of the newer technologies and the Green Source Advantage program. This chart reflects the estimated annual expenditures based on what is coming in and going out of the model. The timing is important and there's flexibility here. This part of the plan is looking at 20 years. The city can adapt the implementation based on funding opportunities, technology, and what the immediate needs are for the city. So for example, for light duty trucks, such as the F-150 Lightning, which is shown in the orange bar, we assume that would come in around the 2025 timeframe. Those trucks have been announced. There are other models that have been announced, but they're not available yet to purchase. And the cost, while the Lightning came in a little lower than industry projections, we do not know the final number of that yet. In addition, we know that having a viable police vehicle is critical. So we push the conversion of the police fleet out to the later years in anticipation that a Dodge Charger or some similar vehicle would come available in before or around the 2030 timeframe. And due to our time constraint today, I won't go through everything, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Financial and policy implications were also evaluated in the development of the action plan. This plan is currently projected to need nearly $88 million in capital expenditures over the next 20 years. However, it's important to realize that many of these initiatives provide life cycle savings to the city. Again, there's an expectation of unprecedented levels of federal and state funding related to transportation electrification and decarbonization initiatives. And these numbers are not, these rebates and incentives are not necessarily reflected in the numbers here. In addition, Duke Energy and various other philanthropic and other organizations may have rebates or grants that would be available to help offset the cost of these initiatives. So the city will continue to identify and pursue the various funding opportunities and mechanisms to reduce that capital expenditure. In addition, policy changes are occurring at the federal level and across nearly every state in the country. The city will obviously continue to monitor and participate in these proceedings moving forward. For example, we know that North Carolina House Bill 951 is in active discussions, I think, as we speak. So in terms of the expected expenditures, transportation electrification is estimated to be nearly 60 million. That's about 2/3 of this incremental investment. Again, we expect grants and incentives and rebates to be available to help offset that. And it will also be reduced over time as cost parity between internal combustion vehicles and electric vehicles is achieved. And please note that light duty cars and trucks are already showing a lifetime savings. But based on current technology and pricing, medium duty, heavy duty, and transit vehicles still have a significant price premium over conventional vehicles. However, the maintenance and fuel savings over the life of the vehicle do make a significant impact. As we discussed earlier, building electrification is not a significant driver for the city of Durham at this time. We do anticipate, however, the city can continue to reduce energy consumption through efficiency and monitoring efforts, which do produce savings over the life of the projects for the city. The renewable energy cost estimates for the city facilities were received a couple of years ago, and it is anticipated that the cost of renewable energy systems should continue to decline over time. The non-capital items associated with this project, the recurring cost or the streetlight conversion to LED, and this is simply based on Duke Energy's current rate structure. And then of course the GSA program, which we discussed earlier. So these costs are meant to provide sort of an order of magnitude. Your actual results will vary based on your implementation schedule and timing, as well as cost and funding opportunities that might be available to you at that time. So based on everything that we discussed this afternoon, the Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan achieves the 50% emissions reduction by 2030 and achieves a 90% reduction by 2040. There are still some emissions associated with facilities and operations as well as vehicles. We also recognize that this is a 30-year plan, and there will certainly be technology, financial, and policy changes that will occur over time that may allow for carbon neutrality without the need to purchase RECs or carbon offsets. And as this is a 30-year plan, we recommend that it be reviewed every 3 to 5 years or so to adjust and reflect any new technologies and opportunities. From a renewable energy perspective, the plan anticipates achieving both the 80% goal in 2030 and the 100% goal in 2050. Although again, as discussed, the Duke Energy GSA program is a significant contributor to that. By 2050, the remainder comes from on-site generation and increased efficiencies. In order to achieve the goals, a best practice is to dedicate staffing to drive the direction and implementation of the plan. This team would be responsible for internal and external stakeholder collaboration, goal monitoring, grant writing, outreach, and many other things, and also ensuring coordination with other city initiatives such as the Roadmap to Sustainability and the Strategic Plan. In closing, I'd like to share this quote that was received by one of the respondents to the survey conducted with the Durham Environmental Affairs Board that we think really embraces the intent and vision for this effort. And that is that everything Durham does moving forward should keep in mind environmental justice. The disadvantaged and marginalized should always be kept at the forefront of whatever plans are made. We don't want just a greener future. We want a better future for everyone. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. Can you take down the slides?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland, thank you so much. I have some comments and questions, but I think I'll hold them for my colleagues. Colleagues, comments and questions for Ms. Strickland or Ms. Austin? Anybody want to start us? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I'm assuming my hand is disappearing into the background, but I really appreciate the presentation. I'm excited about the plan and the steps. And I really would love to hear how the kind of the monitoring that's going on, just specifically around air quality, how that's going to tie into this work as well.
Sure, absolutely. Part of the plan, we've identified sort of 5-year benchmarks of greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets. So, and I'm sure that the Summer and team will be, and Paul will be monitoring that closely to make sure that that the city is moving forward at achieving those cleaner energy targets.
And just one additional question. Did you consider any open space kind of coordination as well? I know that the conversations have been ongoing, and it'd be great to have this kind of sustainability staffing supported, or at least somebody looking at our space planning. And so I'm hoping that that's in there and I just missed it. But
absolutely. I think that maybe some of the city staff could speak better to that, but certainly there's a need and a desire to have collaboration across all city departments and building a greener future for Durham that includes not just sort of energy related things, but more green space and more mobility options and things like that to make sure that the benefits of this kind of plan are available to all residents of the city of Durham.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Ms. Strickland, thank you so much for this incredible piece of work. Summer, good to see you. Master of many trades. Good to see you. Best wishes. First, just a comment and then a question. This is without question a government doing something that's not about us so much. This is about posterity. This is about the future. This is us unambiguously putting our city on a trajectory that will directly impact future governments, future councils, future residents and citizens, not only philosophically, but in terms of expenditures, in terms of equipment, in terms of the way they do things. So I just want to pause at this moment and recognize that this is precisely what we're doing. We are making decisions that will, if heeded and we codify, will circumscribe some choices and decisions that will be made far beyond any of us being on the council. This is trajectory, this is strategic, this is path changing type things. And I say that because I think we should be looking to apply this in some other areas as well when we have some other conversations as a council and use this as a template. Also, when we issue bonds, we're accruing debt that future councils and governments will be responsible for paying, directly impacts it. So I think this is a template that we should keep in mind as we move forward. I'm excited about this. This is the kind of things that that governments should be thinking about beyond just themselves and for our children and our children's sake. And when they look at those funny pictures of us on the wall 100 years from now, hopefully they'll say, hey, they made some good decisions. They dressed funny, but they made some good decisions. I want to ask about our 100% goal 2050. One of the things I've learned about being in government is that 100% don't always mean 100%. It in the way lay people would think about it. So when we say 100% energy renewable energy source by 2050, that doesn't literally mean, does it, that every single bus will be electric by then, right? I just want to be clear. Does that our entire fleet? Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a good point. What we do is we calculate equivalent megawatt hours based on other fuels or but as you said, vehicles that may be available, and then we determine how much renewable energy would need to offset that. So you're right. We are not saying that every vehicle will be transitioned by then, or that there might not be some other emissions lingering, but that you have through your on-site generation, through participation in a program such as the Duke Energy, GSA, and other renewable technologies that we expect over time, and the increase of storage, that you'll have greater flexibility in being able to do that.
Right. And thank you so much for clarifying that. One of my concerns maybe I should say observations in this whole sustainability discussion is a reliance on purchasing of credits to give ourselves credit for meeting our goals. And I'd like to see less reliance on kind of letting polluters and folk get off the hook because they paid us money, with the assurance that we're going to use that money and somewhere else to offset it. And I'm glad to see that this plan involves much more concrete, verifiable, inescapable type policies to affect our carbon footprint as opposed to just kind of buying your way out of participating in the party. This is brilliant. This is the kind of stuff, this is why I got into government, for stuff like this, trajectory, kind of changing things. Kudos and let's do it, Durham. I'm very proud of the work we've done. And for the stuff I'm not going to be around to see. I'm really excited about that, to be able to have an impact on it. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Other questions or comments, colleagues, for Ms. Strickland or Ms. Alston? All right, I have a few. Appreciate my colleagues' comments. I will just add to what Councilmember Middleton said. I'm very excited about this. In my State of the City address in 2019, this was my theme. And then we had, or 2020 rather, and then we had a pandemic. Nobody on this council got to think much about this theme, but you all, Summer, Ms. Alston, and the folks that you hired to do this, were thinking about it and pushing it forward. So to you, I know Stacy Poston, Gina Probst, the whole team, Paul Cameron, and everybody that you've mentioned, Ms. Alston, you all have been constantly pushing this forward, and now we are. I'm just pleased as punch. I guess I'm excited because we set ambitious goals, and what this report shows me is that we can meet them. This was a practical, incredibly detailed. The long report is amazing. My colleagues, if you've not had a chance to read this long report, Ms. Strickland, the consultants did a great job. And I read a lot of these things. We all do on the council, but this one is one of the best. I am so impressed with the way in which you got so far down into the detail about how in each one of these categories you've outlined, we're going to make this happen. And it's good because you can set a goal, and Councilmember Middleton alluded to this. You can set a goal, but showing how you make it, and actually having practical steps towards it is great. And so I really appreciated that. I was also impressed to see that our carbon emissions are already down 16% from 2009. So kudos to our staff and all the various departments. I see Joe Clark is here from Fleet. I know they've had a huge role in this. And so many of our departments, general services, of course, and energy, making our buildings more energy efficient. The cost model, the $88 million in capital investment over 20 years, and almost all of it covered by operational savings, is okay. It's going to be expensive, but those operational savings are going to be meaningful, and they're going to last beyond 20 years. And so I think we're building for, financially, I think this will be advantageous in our long-term future. And I appreciate what you said, Ms. Strickland, about the ability to offset some of these costs in other ways as well, through federal grants and other things that we know will be coming. Tax credits. Well, I guess we don't get tax credits, we're a city, but other kind of benefits that will be coming, financial benefits that I think we can count on. And I just want to again say, how important the green source advantage is. 50% of our renewable energy goal will be met in this way. And so that's important. And again, I want to appreciate our staff for pushing that forward. Your report calls for a task force of residents to be advisory to this work. And perhaps this is a question for you, Ms. Alston, but we already have the Environmental Affairs Board who you all have used as a sounding board. It's a diverse group appointed by the council. Is that the group you're thinking of to be this task force, or are you thinking about a separate group that will do the work?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure that members of the Environmental Affairs Board will be involved. I don't know that we've made a definite decision on how that particular piece of the implementation will work as of yet, but the level of skill and the level of passion that exists on our Environmental Affairs Board, we would be remiss if we didn't take advantage of that. I think we want to reserve the ability to include others as well. So that's a to be determined step, and we would welcome any input there.
No input. I think that what you said makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. I'll just notice that there's a chart of a whole bunch of things about Durham, and the population of Durham is listed as 245,000. Not anymore.
I think we've eclipsed that. Yes, sir. We'll correct that for you. 285,
baby. But yeah. So we will nearly meet, according to this, and you've referred to this a little bit, but we'll nearly meet our 2050 goals through what we can do locally, plus the savings that Duke Energy's renewables program will make in terms of our total electricity purchase. But we may need for up to, I believe it up to potentially 10% of the program to purchase carbon credits. And Councilmember Middleton's already referred to this, and I want to agree with him. We want to do as little of that as possible. And so I know that we don't know the future now. I was encouraging we could get to 90% doing this locally. But of course, what we have to hope is that future councils and future administrations can get this up even farther. I do want to disagree with you, Ms. Strickland, about the future of our buses. I think that if we don't have all electric buses by 2050, we're not going to have a planet by 2050. I can't believe we won't be at electrification at that level. Do you disagree with that, Ms. Strickland?
Mr. Mayor, no, my apologies if I misstated that. I think we actually show all buses converting to electric by 2032, I believe.
Yeah.
I was referring to other sort of heavy duty equipment and other vehicles that may not have a full electric alternative. And that would be, more of your construction type equipment and things like that. But again, that technology is evolving rapidly, and that price parity, I think, will certainly be there by 2050. We just wanted to paint as realistic a picture based on what we know now, based on looking into the future. But I don't have any doubt that by 2040, 2050, we'll see that additional technology that will get there.
I think so too. Thank you. There are a lot of changes required. There's technological change, there's systems changes, there's behavioral changes. And you all have done a great job, I think, in kind of analyzing all the changes needed in all those systems, and I want to thank you. I love some of the things you all talk about, the geothermal at Miss Lake, which is, how fantastic is that? The North Durham water reclamation facility energy conservation successes that we're already seeing. I mean, I wasn't aware of that, and I love that. I think that's fantastic. And then I really am appreciative of you listing the innovative carbon reduction strategies, the tree canopy, the importance of that, the green space, green rooftop, green burial even, and then renewable energy and affordable housing. And so I wanted to just say I'm very hopeful that as we are building out our affordable housing, that our community development department will work with our providers to make sure that we are providing as much infrastructure as we can to make our affordable housing both green and using renewable energy. That's going to be important. So those are my comments. Super impressed and delighted with this direction. Other comments, colleagues. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, don't use Ms. Strickland as a foil to get to me. The bus question was mine, and I want to thank her. She actually answered the question I should have asked. I meant the entire fleet. I said buses, but you actually answered the question without embarrassing me. Thank you for what I should have asked. And we know that there's going to be a whole infrastructure. We need places to plug all that stuff in, which is why I asked. I meant the fleet, but I said buses. So I want to thank you, and so I'll take that from you. He was really disagreeing with me, not you.
We all misspeak at some point. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you. Thank you, Ms. Strickland.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. This is really excellent. I really appreciated how you all divvied it up. It was very easy to understand. Sometimes this gets real technical and wonky, and it's hard to communicate it and to understand it. And I'm, I think it'll help residents have a clear idea of the trajectory that the city is moving in. As we talk about construction, and this isn't necessarily for city operations, this is all focused on city operations, which is important. We're a huge energy user, et cetera. But when, thinking through some of our own ordinances and things like that, how are we going to interplay this with what we know residents also need to do? Because to really tackle climate change, it isn't just going to be us. We can be a really model government center, but we need our residents to do their part as well. And I know sometimes you're going to need some support. I know that there's a lot of really great incentives for solar in North Carolina, but are there conversations tackling that piece?
Thank you,
or how are we going to do it, I guess?
Thank you, Council Member. We see this as a starting point. This is not like an across the finish line point, because as you said, this is just city operations. We see this as perfect this, learn all we can, set up the infrastructure, because we know that the very next thing we need to do is to figure out our public facing strategy and how we're going to lead for the community. There was a discussion among staff just this morning, and I wasn't aware of this. Someone shared with me that apparently we've already made some inroads in our development regulations as it relates to allowing folks to do solar by right in Durham. So I think we're going to continue to push in that direction. And so any lack of attention on the outward facing issues in this document is just a function of us being at the first step, not nearly at the last step.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anything we can do is as council members to highlight that, cheerlead for that, happy to do it. I think many of us here, have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. We all know how critically important this is for our future generations. It is actually it is an existential crisis. We talk about that, but this is an actual one. So we need to do our part, and I just tremendous amount of work and super appreciative.
Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions or anything really to add. I just wanted to echo everyone's appreciation for this incredible report. I did spend a good bit of time reading through the 138 pages and appreciated how comprehensive it is. And also, when we adopted those goals, I don't know that we really felt like we were gonna get there. It was like a real stretch goal. So to have y'all come back with a plan and tell us we're actually on track to get where we need to get with these, with the programs and practices that y'all have come up with is really exciting. And I just want to thank y'all for all this work and look forward to continuing to make progress on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments, colleagues? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just really wanted to just take a moment and just really thank you for making this the priority in 2019 and just noting like this is the fruit of that work. And I want to make sure I do appreciate that the folks on the EAB have been pushing right alongside with you and I am grateful that I've had the chance to serve with them all. I do want to note that the addition of Wi-Fi access, and also to Council Member Caballero's point, the actual installation of pole EV charging stations would encourage me to turn my 15-year-old vehicle in for an electric vehicle if I knew that I wouldn't get stuck anywhere. So I do want to just put those few things out and say this is the work. And I do hope, to the Councilmember Middleton's point about how we use these kinds of models, that we can also turn around and then use the same type of push to address our gun violence in this city, because that's what's necessary. This is the ingenuity and creativity that we're capable of. And so I just want to see us do that. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Okay, I'll give one final shout out, and that's to Bo Ferguson. Bo he's got a new portfolio now, but through all this renewable energy work and the work that we have been doing over at Solid Waste, and along with our water management folks to create the composting pilots and so forth, Bo has been a real champion of steadily pushing ahead on our renewable needs. Now these belong to Bertha Johnson, Bo, and maybe you're tired of them. I'm not sure, but want to appreciate you, and I know Bertha will. I know Ms. Johnson will be doing the same.
Thank you, Mayor, and definitely very proud of this work. Great to see it come to this point. Thank you.
Truly. All right, Ms. Alston, you're off the hook today. Thank you. And Ms. Strickland, grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure working with the City of Durham and the EAB, and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We won't let Ms. Strickland go far. She'll be helping us along the way.
Great, thank you. All right, we're now at our final item, item 23. I see a couple people say that have signed up, they would like to speak on item 24. Item 24 is a public hearing item, will be held. We'll be taking that up on Monday night, so feel free to be there at that meeting. Item 23, Durham County Transit Plan, is our last item today. Ms. Beckman, good to see you.
Hi, thank you for having me. Ellen Beckman, Durham County Transportation Manager. Thanks for having us here today for the update on the Durham Transit Plan. Aaron Kane is also here. He, as staff at the DCHC-MPO planning manager, and together we are co-managing the development of the Durham Transit Plan. I have a presentation. Let me pull it up. Make sure. All right, does that look right? Okay, great. So as everyone knows, the Durham Transit Plan is the required plan to guide how the countywide taxes and fees for public transit are used. The state law requires that this plan be adopted by 3 boards, the Durham County Commissioners, the Go Triangle Board, and the DCHC-MPO Board. But we are working together, Aaron and I, with a large number of staff across many organizations, Go Triangle, the City of Durham, TJ-COG, and additional staff at the MPO and county are all involved in the development of this plan. We have a prime consultant for the project, Kimberly Horn, who is working with multiple sub-consultants on the plan. So this is a shortened version of the presentation. Your materials have a very long version, but I'm not going to give that, but you have it for reference. So let me get started. So first and foremost, this plan started in 2019 with the ending of the Durham Orange Light Rail project. One of the first things we did was coordination with the Durham Comp Plan's listening and learning sessions to identify goals and objectives in 2020. There are 2 core principles listed here at the top for our plan: equity and community trust. Whoop, I didn't mean to go Let me go back. The engagement effort, what we're presenting today is the result of our phase 2 engagement effort, really is critical to achieving these 2 core principles. Equity has guided the design of our process. We've used the equitable engagement blueprint in the design. And the next step, of course, is to make sure that our recommendations and our final plan advance equity and develop a transit network that really provides all residents access to opportunity. Community trust, our second core principle here, recognizes that there are concerns with past projects, that we failed to deliver the light rail project, and that we need to have better oversight and accountability structures to ensure that we are successful this time. We also want to provide a very transparent process for decision-making in this plan, explain why we make the recommendations that we do, citing technical, engagement, financial reasons, and also that residents can learn about and have influence on the process. So that was what the goals and objectives we established in the first engagement done with the comp plan. We reaffirmed those goals and objectives in a phase 1 survey that we did in fall of 2020. That fall of 2020 survey also included the identification of projects that people wanted us to consider for inclusion in the plan. We used all that information to develop this phase 2 survey and these 3 representative transit options that were presented to the public in that survey. So the important thing to note is that our phase 2 survey, right, was focused on 3 transit options, A, B, and C. A was focused on more bus routes, more service, both local and regional, but fewer capital projects. B was focused on bus rapid transit. So that's where you have dedicated lanes or other infrastructure that help buses move faster through traffic. And C was centered around the commuter rail project. So the passenger train connecting Durham and Raleigh, oriented towards peak commuting hours. Both the B and C also included bus services, but less than A. So that was the focus of our phase 2 survey. Our phase 2 survey was conducted over the summer of this year. We got more than 2,300 responses, which was more than 3 times the first survey. And I think this was particularly remarkable because this was a longer, detailed survey, right? As it took me to explain it, there's a lot in each option. There were multiple projects, multiple choices. So we were communicating a lot of complex information, and it really speaks to the need for transit and the priority of transit in our community that 2,300 people responded and participated. We used an online survey, some in-person surveying, an engagement ambassador program that helped solicit surveys, paying residents to work in their communities and neighborhoods to spread the word and get participation. And then Aaron and I also conducted a series of stakeholder interviews. So from this survey, of the 2,300, here's the demographics of who we heard from. About half were people of color, and the vast majority, I think more than 85% of those were Black or African American. About a third were regular transit riders. Daily transit riders are the people who said that they rode the bus every day. Weekly added in people who said they rode it at least a few times a week. So we are reporting on these 3 demographic groups throughout this presentation, and especially in the full results that are in your packet. A couple things to note: the line on no vehicle households and households that make less than $45,000. Those were very well represented among our transit rider responses. So I think this is a really good representation of Durham, and certainly owe a lot to our engagement ambassadors. This shows how we got that many responses, more than half were done through the Engagement Ambassador Program. Kimberly Horn subcontracted with Ideal Ortiz, Durham resident, who managed this program. So she did a great job. More than half of our responses were gotten through that. And you can see that it represents a large number of the responses from people of color and transit riders. So the format of the survey was to walk residents through those 3 representative options, A, B, and C. There was a map, there was a description of what was in each. And then we asked residents, what do you like most about A? What do you dislike most about A? And so on for A, B, and C. And then there were 2 concluding questions at the end. So there were 8 questions total. And we did require that people choose and prioritize. I think many residents may have wanted to tell us that they liked everything. However, we didn't allow residents to say that. We typically said you had to choose your top 5 or your top 2. And this really reflects our choices that we have. We will have to make some choices about what we prioritize, and we likely cannot afford everything that residents want. The survey responses are shown in this general format. There's a bar chart that shows the total and what the total responses said in order, a priority order. And then our 3 focus groups are listed at the bottom. If focus groups said that they had the same priority as the total, it got a blue bar through it. If it was a higher priority, it got the green up triangle. And if it was a lower priority, it got the pink down triangle. So here's an example. First question, what do you like most about option A? You can see the responses from 1 to 10 for the total across the top. And then the focus groups listed below there, persons of color, daily transit riders, and then daily and weekly transit riders. So like in this example, right, the focus groups and the total all said that getting more improvements quicker was the thing they liked the most about option A. However, when you look at the next 2 responses, 2 and 3, there were some differences, right? The total responses said more frequent service to Durham, Chapel Hill, and RTP, and more money for sidewalks. However, among our focus groups, service improvements and more reliable service rose to the top. So extended 30-minute service and extended Sunday service were consistently cited throughout this from our transit riders as high priorities. And what that means is that the bus runs more frequently later at night and more frequently later on the weekends on Sundays. Improving traffic signals also was a high priority. So improvements to make buses run faster and more reliably was also a repeated theme. So I'm not going to go through all of the responses, but they are in the full set of presentations. The key takeaways from those 6 questions about A, B, and C are listed here. Our focus groups consistently identified later and weekend bus service and more bus frequency and more reliable bus service as their highest priorities throughout the questions. All respondents supported getting more improvements more quickly. All respondents supported bus rapid transit either explicitly or they voiced a support for the elements of bus rapid transit. So again, bus rapid transit is both the infrastructure to help buses move faster through traffic and also the service. So 15-minute or better service. And then lastly, the passenger train, the commuter rail. It has support, certainly. It rated #1 and among a number of questions among our total responses when we asked various questions. However, notably, it did have less support from people of color and our daily transit riders. At the end of the survey, we had 2 kind of more comprehensive concluding questions that were aimed at helping us deliver and craft a final recommended plan. This is one. So to remind everyone, the commuter rail project was in option C. And we are currently estimating that it would be 50% paid for through federal funding and 50% non-federal funding. Of the non-federal funding, right now we are modeling that Durham would pay 20% of that, which is consistent with our current adopted transit plan. Wake County's current adopted transit plan says that they will pay 67%. So that does not add up to 100%. The commuter rail study, which is going on in parallel with the transit plan and is being managed by Go Triangle, has a task in there that there will be a cost sharing agreement between Wake and Durham County to identify the full funding for the project. We've had a number of discussions with Go Triangle and Wake County about this, and we're looking at several options. It involves different cost shares, different financing options. There's a lot of choices in how we do this. But this question was really aimed at asking our residents what their priorities were and what their potential willingness to pay more for this project would be. So we asked people, if we fund a passenger train, commuter rail, what else do we need to make sure that we can afford to pay for? We allowed them to tell us that commuter rail was the top priority, no matter what, make it happen. That's the fifth answer here from the total. And then we also allowed people to tell us that the commuter rail was the lowest priority, that everything else was more important than commuter rail. And that's here as the third answer. Notably, when looking at the total responses for this question, overall, the top two were pretty consistently supported among focus groups and the total. So more 15-minute service, more bus service to more places in Durham. And again, like the transit riders, again, spoke up and said that they supported the extended 30-minute service on weekdays late at night and extended Sunday service on weekends. But the one thing that is important to note here is that of those who identified as persons of color, the third answer here, that everything was more important than a passenger train, was the top choice. It was the third most frequently chosen answer overall. Our transit riders did not choose this as the top choice. It was number 4, number 6. I do think that our transit riders recognize that the commuter rail offers something that our current bus system does not in terms of increased reliability and speed. But it is important to recognize that there is a concern about the commuter rail among a large group of people in Durham. And I think that, a lot of this has to do with our experience with the light rail project, right? And the concern that a large project like this may crowd out or direct resources away from other needed projects. And again, it also points to the need for more oversight and accountability if we're to pursue a big project like that. The last question was, what outcomes are most important to include in your ideal transit option? There was pretty consistent support for these top 3 across all respondents. So ending on an area of unity, more routes going more places, faster, more reliable service, and more frequent service. So Erin and I also did a series of stakeholder interviews over the summer with all of the groups listed here. Some of these involved multiple meetings. Also, the City County Office on Youth conducted some youth listening sessions, in addition to the interviews that Erin and I did. So among those stakeholder interviews, this is what people were telling us. First, a lot of things echoed the survey, right? So bus operations improvements, like the later service at night and on weekends, were cited as high priorities among stakeholders who work with, educate, or employ low-income residents. Improvements to access were a priority from disabled residents and health organizations. Bus rapid transit was cited as a priority among Durham business and institutional stakeholders. Our outreach with UNC and other regional partners cited the support for better service between Durham and Chapel Hill. And then again, commuter rail. Like, I think most of the stakeholders we interviewed liked the idea of the commuter rail project, saw that it would provide better connectivity between Durham and Raleigh. But again, many people did cite concerns about the project's costs and the effect on funding other higher priorities. All right, so that was the results of our engagement for phase 2 in short. Our next steps here are to craft a final plan. So this is going to, our team together, we are looking at these engagement results, analyzing the engagement results, also looking at a lot of technical information. I didn't talk about that today, but there is a lot of technical information, a lot of data that we have about bus services and who uses them and what the needs are, as well as financial options. So there's a lot of financial options with each of these scenarios and projects. BRT, bus rapid transit, alone has several options and choices within there in terms of its geographic scope of how we define that project, how we potentially phase that project, how it could be coordinated with Orange County, who is also developing their transit plan at this time, and also how we may be able to coordinate better with NCDOT, as some of our corridors that we're looking at coincide with NCDOT highways on 15501 and 147. Finance, again, that's a big factor in the development of our final preferred plan. The Go Triangle develops and runs the finance model. County finance staff is also reviewing that. There are many assumptions in there about revenue projections, borrowing that we need to pay close attention to. We do not want to overpromise and underdeliver. We want to make sure that our plan has a lot of resiliency to address potential funding scenarios that we may have. A lot of the projects have different options for funding. Federal funding or local funding could be used to supplement the transit plan funding and allow us to achieve more projects and address more of the needs of our residents. We aren't assuming any state funding. And of course, the applicability and the reality of additional local funding depends on the project. It may be more feasible for some smaller scale projects or where there's mutual benefits, like sidewalks. So our goal is to look at all this and release the recommended plan in January. We want to allow needed projects to be implemented next year. So they need to be in our adopted plan and in the adopted FY23 work plan. But we also want to coordinate with the results of the Go Triangle commuter rail study. Technical aspects of that study are scheduled to be complete later this year, but I understand there are some delays associated with railroad capacity modeling. So we might need to be flexible on that. So overall, like I said, the final plan, our goal is to try to get something released for public review around January of next year. There would be a third phase of engagement on this, and then it would need to go to the 3 boards for adoption of the plan. So lastly, the last thing I want to touch on is the transit plan governance study. So we have an existing interlocal implementation agreement for the plan that says the role that each of the entities involved in this play. It was written very much oriented around the delivery of the light rail project. So there's a number of changes that need to be made to reflect the priorities of the new transit plan. It's also an opportunity to reevaluate the role that each entity plays and address those issues of community trust. Creating a more clear, efficient governance structure, providing residents clarity in how they can participate and who makes the decisions here, and establishing new oversight accountability processes. Many of you participated in some initial interviews that occurred in September, and the next step would be to have a joint workshop where we start to look at some of our choices for how we structure this moving forward. And the goal is to have a new interlocal implementation agreement recommended with the final transit plan. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. I can stop sharing.
Okay. Ms. Beckman, thank you for a great report. We really appreciate it. Colleagues, and Mr. Kane, good to see you too. Colleagues, questions and comments for Ms. Beckman? Councilmember Freeman.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Ms. Beckman and Mr. Kane. I realize how difficult the conversations had gotten in some instances, and I really appreciate how they managed to navigate those conversations. And so just being mindful that, that this is a process. And I think that as a whole, more of our community is interested in commuter rail. It's just there's that apprehension based on the light rail. And then just knowing that if we can manage to put the effort towards improving our bus service, which includes making sure that our bus drivers feel safe, I think that goes a long way in getting everyone on board for commuter rail. And so I do really appreciate what you guys have done, the team has done, and pulling this work together. And this presentation highlights a lot of tedious conversations and presentations and feedback and surveys. And I'm just mindful that we've been down this road a time or two, and this time I think I felt for you both and some of those presentations. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Council Member. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks y'all so much for this presentation and for all this work. I really appreciated the way that you presented the data and gave us the rankings for the individual groups of people that whose voices you were trying to emphasize. It was really helpful to be able to look at the overall data and then compare it to what those target groups had answered, and to see how different some of them were, particularly that a lot of the people of color, daily transit riders and weekly transit riders ranked the things that ended up in the top 3 often much lower. And so that was just interesting to see top 3 and top 4. I feel like whenever we talk about how we expand our transit system, we end up trying to thread the needle or trying to find the right balance between serving the needs of people who are dependent on our transit system, who don't have cars and who need the transit system to actually go about their lives, and making the system more attractive to people who don't currently use transit, who have the option of using a personal car, but who we want to get on the transit system for lots of reasons: sustainability, traffic, future growth. And I'm wondering if y'all can talk a little bit about how we are finding that balance, how y'all are thinking about that when you're moving forward and synthesizing all of this data to come back to us with a recommendation.
Well, that's a great question, right? That's the job, right? That is, we're working through that right now, right? To figure out what we can afford, how we can achieve both, right? How we can address the needs of current transit riders. I mean, I do think that the survey is saying that we should prioritize that first and foremost. And I think we all recognize that there's some opportunities to do that soon, especially with like service late at night, service on weekends, right? Clear priorities. And we are certainly looking at that very closely of how we can do that as quickly as possible. And while also considering how we can build for the future, how we can provide a commuter rail project that could offer benefits for decades to come, right? As the triangle grows and as our downtowns grow and as all these businesses come here, right? There is certainly a strong interest and desire to better connect Durham and Raleigh and provide a regional service. I mean, I personally do think that one of the great ways that we can attract new riders is to improve the current service for the existing riders. I think there's a lot of folks who maybe are barely affording a car, right? But feel that they have to have it because or else they can't get to their job on time. And so I think some of the improvements that prioritize existing transit riders will also bring in more transit riders. It's better service for transit riders is better service for everyone. Aaron, do you have anything to add?
No, you said it great. I'm not going to slow your momentum.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah, I appreciate the emphasis on the needs of our current transit riders. I think that's the right emphasis, but of course, we also need to be getting more people on the buses. So it's a hard job. I really appreciate this report and all the thought that you're putting into it. If we had all the money, we'd do all the things, but unfortunately, we're going to have to make some decisions. Thank you for your guidance.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Other comments and questions? Ms. Beckman and Mr. Kane, what do you anticipate in terms of the staff working group and the city's membership on that? What's the plan?
So that is a topic of the governance study. Right. The staff working group is established in our current interlocal implementation agreement, and the membership of that is set by that agreement. So the governance study will be looking at modifications to that. The interviews that you participated in were part of our process to make that decision. Evaluating different options and different roles that entities may have. Durham and Orange County have very similar agreements and roles, right? With a 3-person staff working group, one from the county, one from the MPO, and one from Go Triangle. However, in Wake County, they have a much more expansive equivalent to their staff working group that includes a lot of staff from various municipalities, but they have a lot of municipalities, right? So we're evaluating those options. We do have an example in Wake County that shows, how municipalities can participate that we'll be looking at. But that decision remains to be made through that process.
Thank you. Well, let me just advocate again, as I have previously, for the city being a full and voting member of the staff working group. You all know better than I that the city is we own this bus system we're talking about. And I just really think it's critically important. And we're going to have, whatever happens with the transit plan, in terms of the funding that's coming through the sales tax, we're putting our tax dollars, lots of our tax dollars, our property tax dollars into this system, have a huge commitment to it, have a historical commitment to it. So I'm thrilled that that it will be receiving continued support by the county transit tax. But I just want to say again, I think it's absolutely crucial that the city be a full member of the staff working group. So I want to put that out. In terms of being able to do it all, it seemed like the question about doing it all is not really if we can do it all, it's really when we can do it. When I looked at the longer slideshow, the big one, and I can't remember if this may be in the other one as well, the performance metrics basically says projects implemented by 2027, and then it has anywhere, depending upon the plan, from 25 to 70% of the implementation will be able to take place by then. But 2027, of course, isn't the last year of when we collect our transit tax money. So is there further projection about the ability to realize service goals in that way beyond the 2027 year?
Yeah, I can maybe address this a little bit, Mayor. So one thing, this plan would go out to 2040. And that's our horizon for this plan. And the intention is that it be updated every 5 years so that we can address new needs, changing revenue streams, and so forth. As we've also been putting together as your colleagues, Councilperson Caballero and Councilperson Freelon on the MPO board have seen, we're also putting together our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which goes out to 2050 and shows that through 2050, we can afford it all, so to speak, or at least afford the vast majority of it. We're trying to leave this to 2040, so it's more of a manageable chunk of funding to plan and implement. But if we were to look out an extra 10 years or so, we would be able to afford most of the things that we're talking about in the transit. Just not necessarily within the 2040 year of the horizon. So I don't want people to get the thought that if it's not in the plan, it will never get done. That is certainly not the case. It just might not need to be beyond the horizon year of this plan.
And it also assumes no other income beyond the transit tax, and I guess the city property tax for support of the bus system. And it lives with current financing inputs. Is that right?
That's correct for local dollars. We do assume for major capital projects like, say, commuter rail, that we would get 50% from federal. We do not assume any state participation at this time.
Right. Yeah. But for the bus system and for all of it, other than that federal, you're not assuming, let's just say between now and 2030, we could choose to provide some additional funds, and that's not built in.
That is not built in at this time, no.
Yeah.
Like additional local funding options?
Yeah, or additional, we could be approved for additional transit tax, or we could provide additional local funding.
Yeah. I mean, we do want to make sure we're not over promising, right, and under delivering. So yeah, that is something we're talking about right now as we talk about the final recommendations. But it is.
I understand. That makes a lot of sense. I also think, though, that I think we need all these things, and I think that the council in the next 5 years, 10 years, is going to have to figure out how to get us all these things. And that's going to be more money. And it could come in a variety of ways. I mean, I don't think it's impossible that we would get state money for, from commuter rail, for commuter rail, for example. There's not, at least there hasn't been the antipathy in the legislature towards commuter rail that there has towards light rail. And we'll hopefully either we will have the cooperation of North Carolina Railroad and the Norfolk Southern, or we won't. But if we do, I think that again helps us in terms of state funding. So I don't think that's, that doesn't seem like a pipe dream. And I think that we're just going to need to think about what we want in terms of transit over the next decade and figure out how to fund it. And so I'm agreeing with you. I'm not trying to get you, Ms. Beckman or Mr. Kane, to project those things into your plan. I agree. You need to be working with the current assumptions. But I'm just putting it out there for the council that I think our real plan should be all of the above. And just like we know we need more green infrastructure, we're making a plan for it. We know we need more affordable housing, pass affordable housing bond. I just think that with transportation, my colleagues, I think that you all are going to have to think about how to figure out how to fund that and figure out what we need. When you looked at also on the longer presentation, there are 2 slides on equity, the equity analysis. And I had some thoughts about that, but I wondered what your takeaways were from those slides. Ms. Beckman or Mr. Kane, what did you take out of that?
Okay, so what you're referring to were the job access slides.
Yeah.
And just a few notes, like that was one of the more technically challenging aspects of this process. And It's also difficult to communicate to the public in a clear way. We're trying to communicate kind of a lot of information in those two slides. There was a slide on how many jobs are accessible from 6 different affordable housing communities and how many people have access within a 45-minute transit trip to 6 different job centers. The analysis was run at peak commuting times, and we ran it as if you could plan your trip, right? As if you looked at the bus schedule or the train schedule and got to the stop in time for the bus or the train, not based on just arriving any random time during the day. So that's important to note because that definitely is something that not everyone can do, and maybe there's with services that are more oriented towards peak times, they perform better. Like the commuter rail project is oriented towards peak times. So overall, though, what I think that is saying is that each of the options has positives and negatives there. There's no really clear overall winner. Some did better. It depended on your geography. It depends on where you live and where you're going, how beneficial all of these services are. And then on the slide that was about access to different job centers, a few kind of points of emphasis are that downtown Durham, Duke, South Square, like places in Durham are always going to be the most accessible job centers for Durham residents, because they're closer. So they are today, and they will continue to be kind of the most accessible job centers for residents of Durham. The option C, the commuter rail, certainly helped a lot in terms of growth of access to jobs in RTP and downtown Raleigh. But still, like travel to downtown Raleigh will be faster and more reliable than it is today, but downtown Raleigh is still 20 miles away, right? Like we can't change that geography. So it helps, but it's still much lower than some of those other job centers. Yeah, so I guess that's a quick summary of what some of the takeaways from that are.
Yeah.
We will be looking at ways that we can improve this, because we did get some feedback that it was confusing, or that, we running the analysis different ways, which makes a difference for what the results are.
Yeah, I mean, you have to pay attention to the slides, but I think if you do, you can, a person like me who's not great at this can do it. And, one of the things that I took away from it, and that has nothing to do with transit but it has something to do with everything else we think. I mean, it has something to do with transit, but Oxford Manor, in terms of the affordable housing communities that you looked at, is such an outlier in terms of the accessibility that people have to jobs. I mean, comparing it to McDougall Terrace, Daymar Court, Shannon Road, East Main Street. And that doesn't change when you add from any of the plans, A, B, or C. You're more than doubling the accessibility of jobs from Oxford Manor. You're getting a better bang for your buck there than any other place. But still, even with that, the number of jobs accessible to people in Oxford Manor will be, there's not a single one that it won't be less than half of, even with the transit improvements. And it just, I was so struck by that and thinking about some of the other things we do in the city. So that's not really so much a comment about what we need to do in terms, that doesn't influence what we do in the transit planning. Either of those plans would provide them with accessibility, about the exact same accessibility, option A a little bit better, but it's a huge challenge, that community in terms of helping people get employment. If it's not accessible with a 45-minute transit trip, it's for people that don't have cars, it's just, I mean, it struck me as so challenging. But the other thing I'll say that I also felt about it was when I looked at the 519 East Main Street, that was the community that gets by far the largest improvement. It already has, of any of the communities you looked at, it already has the highest accessibility of jobs accessible within a 45-minute transit trip. It's downtown. But it nearly doubles, and it's much, much higher than the other two options in terms of improvements for job accessibility. And option C is. And so, what I've thought about that is that is where our affordable housing is going to, our subsidized affordable housing, our permanently subsidized affordable housing is going to be. It's going to be at 519. It's going to be at the 2 county parking lots. It's going to be at Fayette Place. It's going to be at the Durham Housing Authority headquarters where we're building affordable housing. It's going to be at J.J. Henderson. It's going to be in that quarter. And that did strike me as a significant advantage for option C, that where we know that fixed route transit can be gentrifying. And here we have a situation where we're building housing where we know is going to be permanently subsidized. And it'll really help people in those houses get to jobs. So I thought that was important. My other observation is just an appreciation for the thoroughness and the outreach and the way in which you have gone about really making sure that we heard from our riders and the people that our engagement ambassadors could reach. You all did a great job on that, and it shows, and I really appreciated it. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for really telegraphing some of my concerned areas of concern. So you've taken some time off for what I need to say, particularly with respect to accessibility for people like people in Oxford Manor. So this is, I was really looking forward to this presentation. As I've said time and time again, no city can really be considered a great metropolis until it crosses that threshold where all of its jewels are accessible without a car. Everything that makes it a culturally desirable, from an employment, getting to doctor's appointments, until you can do that without a car, you have to cross that threshold to truly be a great metropolis. So this is critically important work, transformative work. Former Secretary of Transportation said that transportation is really one of the last great, I'm paraphrasing, one of the last great fronts in the civil rights struggle. And I would say the human rights struggle, people being able to get to the opportunities that we've so often fought to create and access them. I want to ask a question about if something that Ms. Beckman and Mr. Kane, good to see you both, by the way, if something might be helpful. And you mentioned light rail. One of the things I constantly hear as I engage residents and citizens, there's this, and I'm hesitant to call it a canard. There's this conception that there's $160 million is just missing. That we spend all this money on light rail and it's unaccounted for, that it's gone down some hole or in people's pockets for the most part. And, I've tried to have conversations and explain to folk that, those drawings, those engineering reports and architectural plans, some of those things can be millions of dollars without any ground ever being moved. So there are ways of explaining the money. So I want to ask, I remember a few years back and our budget and finance department would produce this kind of really accessible document, the citizen's budget kind of thing. It's a truncated, really accessible version. For some reason, the copy they put in my office said budget for dummies. My colleagues didn't get that copy for some reason, so I think I was targeted for that one. But it was a really accessible document that explained our budget, the budgetary highlights. Would it be helpful in your assessment if we maybe produce something like that regarding the money we spend on light rail? Because it is such a big thing with a lot of folk, particularly, I'll be honest, in the African-American community when it comes to supporting future plans, particularly if they're going to be connected to tax increases or increased revenues going out. There's such a perception, not amongst all, but a lot of people, that there's just this big pot of money that just disappeared with respect to light rail. So why should we trust anything else we say? And I'm wondering, would it be helpful to have some type of accounting, have some type of instrument, maybe some type of truncated kind of like we did for the budget, the people's budget, to explain just for light rail, not rehashing or relitigating why it didn't happen, but here's what we spent on light rail and here's where it went. And here's why it's not just missing, that we can account for it, even though we don't have the project, but here's where the money went. And if this is out of your bailiwick, or please forgive me, but we're talking about transportation. When we talk about community buy-in, this is something I constantly hear from members of the community when it comes to buy-in and the future of our transportation infrastructure here in our city and indeed our region. So either one, and I'll yield it.
I mean, I know Go Triangle has produced a memo on the light rail cost, and they updated it a few months ago. I believe it's on their website. And I can look for that and give you the link. And we can work with them to make sure it addresses your concerns. Or we could incorporate it into this transit plan, as a matter of accountability and just clarity. Because I agree, it is brought up a lot. People have questions about what we spent the money on. So we'll work on that with
Thanks,
Go Triangle.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kane, were you going to jump in? I'm sorry, I thought.
No, I was going to say the same thing she did.
Probably best bet, right?
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, other comments or questions? All right. I think I will make one more comment about the light rail. I think that there's no question that and I've heard this as you all have been talking about, there's no question that the failure of the light rail has really undermined trust and the expenditure of all that money, as well it should. And that's the thing that I think. I agree with Councilmember Middleton that it's important that people know where the money went, and the money went to things that money should go to when you're trying to get a good project like that off the ground. But what went wrong with that was way beyond kind of those individual expenditures. It was that important hurdles were never leaped that had to be leaped early. Their deal with the railroad, the deal with Duke, we all know what they are. I don't feel like reciting them, or else I might have to, cut my throat. I think that another way I think, Council Member, and for our staff, that I think is useful to talk about it, is to just acknowledge that, and this is what I try to do, is that it was, that in a sense, that money was poured away. That, not that anybody lined their pockets illegitimately or anything like that, of course not. But that the work that would have gotten us over those important hurdles wasn't done early enough. And that led to, there are lots of things. There are lots of, there are other things that are to blame. But I think that's important to acknowledge that, and then to not do it again. And you have to convince people you're not by getting over those hurdles early. So the work that's being done now with Go Triangle with the North Carolina Railroad is years earlier in the process than that work was done for the light rail. And so I think people are it's going to have to be proven, I get the mistrust. I truly do. And so I think that while the kind of individual understanding of where the expenses went is important, so people don't think, somebody stole the money or something. I also think there's another level at which it needs to be discussed with people. And that is just to acknowledge that it was, it was a debacle. And there's no reason not to own up to that, because that's what it was. Those are my happy thoughts.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. And I think it's critically, I think it's important coming from you in particular as a mayor. So I appreciate that deeply. And I'm gonna use it verbatim.
Yes, feel free.
Thanks much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Beckman. Thank you, Mr. King.
Member Caballero?
Yeah, just a thought with that last comment. Is there a way that we can also highlight that in the transit plan? Exactly, like, okay, this deal with the railroad, that conversation in the timeline is happening a lot earlier, so that folks can see that comparison to help build the public trust, like images, infographics that are easy this work is real technical. I say that a lot in the MPO. It is at a level that most folks just don't understand unless they're in transit. And so when we're in the transit plan, making it visually appealing and easy to understand, I think is going to be very important. Sharing some of the previous mistakes. So they say, yeah, this was a really painfully hard lesson that cost a lot of money and we're not replicating it in this plan. And then finally, I just really want to reiterate what Mayor Schul said about the role that the city has with negotiation. I don't think we're going to succeed if we're not brought in as a city. I'm just plainly say that. We have to figure out how to have an excellent bus system. We know who uses the bus. We know by improving it, other folks will use the bus. And we also have to have a regional system. There's just no way around it. I understand our constraints, our financial constraints. I understand the resource universe, those parameters. And as council members now and in the future, and as county commissioners now and in the future for those of our county colleagues, there's no way forward without figuring it out. I said it in MPO, I want A and C, right? These scenarios, right? We have to figure out how to do regional and local, and we will not be successful otherwise. We need to get the folks who use our bus and rely on it. They deserve a better bus system. And we also need a lot of folks out of their cars. And we're not going to do that if we don't do both. So I appreciate the update. I think you all have done a really remarkable job around engagement, seeing the differences between survey A and the two rounds of surveys. Critically important. I appreciate all the work, and I look forward to seeing what happens.
Thank you very much, Council Member. All right, colleagues, I think we've done it. Ms. Beckman and Mr. Kane, thank you. I'm grateful to you. Y'all want to come back to the city and work? Just a thought.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you're welcome anytime. Thank you so much. We appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, I believe we're ready to settle the agenda. No, are we ready first for the clerk? I do this every week, don't I, Madam Manager? It's not deliberate.
Okay, well, we've got the Racial Equity Commission appointments. 3 of them have been confirmed. The at-large member, Theodore Ted Reuter, has been selected by the council for nomination. For Ward 1, Derek S. Rhodes has been selected, and then the youth position, Taylor A. Walker. The second at-large member, council has reached consensus to re-advertise that position. For Ward 2, there was not unanimity. There were 2 votes for Krista Kenny, 2 votes for Terrence Priester, and 2 votes for Tarek Woods.
I'm fine with flipping my vote to Tarek Woods.
Okay, that gets Tarek.
I would also change my vote.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And for
Madam
Ward
Clerk?
3.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Okay. Did you have a question about Ward 2?
No.
Okay. Ward 3, there is a similar situation. There are 2 votes for Delvin Davis, 2 votes for Adam Myers, and 2 votes for Nisha Williams.
Anybody want to change their votes on that?
I'll change my vote to Nisha Williams.
All right. Anybody else want to change their vote to Nisha Williams? She would have 4.
I can too.
I can change mine as well.
All right.
Okay, there we go. We've got it.
All right, Madam Clerk, I do have one question.
Yes.
The student, it looked to me like they said they did not live in the city.
I would
saw
have
that
to check
too.
on that, and I will ask Paola Rowland to come to the microphone if she's here.
I don't. Yes,
Hi,
she
yes.
is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I verified all addresses for the REC when I was first when I first received them through Go Maps. I believe she was right on the border, and that was Ashley, correct?
It was Taylor.
Taylor Walker.
The name of the student, but I thought that they put in their application they didn't live in the city. Ms. Rowland, I could be wrong.
When I checked through Go Maps, it did say that it was a City of Durham address, but I can triple check for you and if you'd like, Mr. Mayor.
That would be good. Unless I'm wrong, you can look at the form. I may have just read that wrong, but if they did say that, it would be good to truly find out if they live in the city. But thank you, Ms. Rowland. That'd be great. All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Manager.
All right, I am ready to set the agenda for the next city council meeting. We have for our consent agenda items 1 through 4, item 6 through 22, and item 26. We have GBA public hearings, item 24 and item 25.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Is there a motion that we settle the agenda per the manager's recommendation?
So moved.
Moved by Council Member Freeman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schewel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
And Councilmember Reese is not here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously and the agenda is settled. Colleagues, thank you. It's been a long day together, but I think a productive day. And I really appreciate our staff. What a great agenda we had today. I'm now going to declare this meeting adjourned at 4:06 p.m. and I'll see you all around the corner.